Robert Bobby Nuggz is a multiple award-winning cannabis rights activist, celebrated journalist, and public speaker. Globally known for his passion and dedication for cannabis and concentrates, Robert has judged cannabis cups all across the United States, and in 2014 he organized the first secret cup, Beast Coast. He is well versed in cannabis, having published over 200 related articles in numerous publications, and currently you can find his writing in Northeast Leaf magazine, DigBoston, and more. In 2015, he co-authored an advanced course curriculum for Northeastern Institute of Cannabis. Bobby continues to organize his own events in New England and tirelessly educates the community at seminars and expos from coast to coast, now focused on the 2021 Higher Education Music and Arts Festival and Interpretasting. His mission is to help set up an overall quality standard in the industry and end the stigma surrounding cannabis use. Follow the 420 aficionado on Instagram at BobbyNuggz_official. Zoom live with In the Weeds January 27th at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we sit down and talk with Bobby Nuggz about how he got into cannabis, his inspirations, his journey, and his future at www.facebook.com/Prohibition Talk Radio and YouTube.
Got tired of it all. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. How could I help myself finally? Cannabis was there for me, man. And it really broke down a barrier that I needed to break down, a really dark barrier that I needed to break down. And at that point in time, I didn't think that I would be able to make a career out of any of this. It was more like, I just need to save myself, you know? But before I knew it, I was like, networking on Facebook and putting a lot of my time into that. And Facebook really opened a lot of doors for me. In 2009, I ended up starting to write for this magazine in California, writing articles from Rhode Island about New England, what was happening there in the beginning phases of medical cannabis. Because Rhode Island had just passed a medical marijuana law in 2006. So this was 2009 I started writing, right about 2 years out of high school. So it's been about 12 years and it's been the best time of my life. Around that time, I met the King of Pot from Boston, one of my mentors. Rest in peace, man. He really helped me a lot, dude, so many different ways. And along with all that came notoriety I didn't think I would have, and started writing. That was really where I got my foot in the door. I started writing for another magazine from New England, and putting my thought processes and creativity into what was going on here instead of the magazine from Cali. But Cannabis Times opened the door for me. They were one of the only magazines at the time that I thought that I could try to get in with without having any high school diploma or really any background in writing. And they sparked that for me. And since then, with Northeast Leaf now, I've been published in 12 publications over the last 11 years. And I'm still a cannabis patient, just renewed my card for the 11th year. This is my whole life. About 2013 is when I really started getting into dabs. I've always been into hash, but my mom, my stepfather were rated for cannabis when I was a little boy. So I went through that whole phase, seeing them go through that type of thing. And my mom's very open with cannabis, and has always been there for me every step of the way to support me in this dream of mine. So it's been fun, man. I'm super proud, humbled, happy to be here and feeling healthy in this weird time we're living in.
Right. It's amazing to say that, right? Knock on wood. The story's amazing. Being a medical cannabis patient. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, that's really where you kind of started years ago. I mean, and you're saying, 11 years ago now, 12 years ago, starting off as a patient, especially in the East Coast. That had to be weird, right? I mean, that had to be a little scary. I mean,
yes.
Where were you at that point?
I was one of the first 4,000 or 5,000 patients in the state of Rhode Island. And I knew that I was putting my name on a list and going down to the Department of Health and checking my photo in and all that stuff was really weird. But at the same time, it was a wicked proud moment for me, because I felt like not only was I breaking new ground in my life to get a new medicine and be able to legally use it, I was making a huge statement, because I was young at the time, 21, 22, and there was a guy in Rhode Island who was giving out cards like candy. I'm talking, he probably gave out 3,000 cards and they all got revoked. So he left all these people and took their money and just really screwed over a lot of people. And I'm glad I waited, because I maybe would have followed a different path if I hadn't done things the right way. And once I had that medical card, I kind of felt a sense of security, I guess, to actually like put my face out there. And that was one of the decisions I made was, you know, I was going to go all into this, no half in, no half out. I wasn't going to work a 9 to 5. All my dice are on the table. I rolled them, man. So I'm happy with how things turned out and super thankful.
Well, it's amazing that you get into it through media, right? Because again, we talk about the big stigma on media and the stranglehold that big media and the government kind of has on media right now. I mean, you know, there's a couple of articles in the world right now about billboards being taken down in California that are crossing state lines, which, you know, I can kind of get that in a way, you know what I mean? But I look and laugh. I mean, your journey has been going on for 11 years, and now we're here. So, I mean, from 11 years ago to now, you know, what's been the biggest change that you've seen? I mean, obviously there's got to be a lot, but I mean, being a patient wise, because I mean, Rhode Island is not really known for.
In 2014, when I threw that cannabis cup, the Beast Coast Secret Cup, right after that, man, all hell broke loose, and the feds came to the state and the High Intensity Drug Task Force Agency. I definitely feel like my friends and I were in a way responsible for what had happened, just by drawing so much attention to such a small area with hydrocarbon extractions. At that point in time, I know 2 people personally that I know in my circle that ended up getting raided and for processing BHO. Within 2 or 3 years, a couple kids passed away in the state of Rhode Island for making it in their house. And it was like they were college kids in their campus. It ended up being this huge thing. And they finally like, all right, what is BHO? What is everybody doing? How are, you know, and education needed to come about. So I took it upon myself to try to educate people about hydrocarbon extractions, how not to process it in your home, outside if you're going to do it. And it was really the beginning phases. But now rosin really just changed the whole world. It's so cool to see, man. Like now I'm going to dispensaries and where you can't even buy BHO at, but you can purchase rosin. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest changes and revolutionized concentrates for all of us. And anybody at home can now safely make it without fear. And yeah, for me, that was one of the coolest to witness. And the 710 culture take place before rosin, and then rosin happening was like, it propelled everything, man. And like now there's so many head shops, and even you got a new device I never even seen dabbing out of your hash oil. So it's creating opportunities all over the world for people. And got to think rosin, people aren't hurting themselves anymore, even though I do know people who still, mistakes happen. You know, if you're working with these volatile gases, you know, you can really hurt yourself. So science comes into play with all that stuff. If you don't have a degree in certain chemistries, you shouldn't be working with it. Get yourself a rosin press, man, and make some bubble water, you know?
Well, you say that, and we've seen labs explode. Like it's not, not just home labs, but out in California we saw a lab explode. In Mexico recently we saw another lab explode.
And these are state-of-the-art facilities where mistakes can still happen. You got to remember they're all wired with electricity, and so much can happen. I know someone who passed away. He didn't pass away. He almost passed away maybe a few years ago, and the furnace in his house sparked and lit the gas downstairs and leveled the whole house, but he survived it. And he's definitely he educates people now about the dangers behind making hydrocarbon extractions, BHO.
It's amazing.
I don't think people realize when they're dabbing a good butane hash oil exactly the process behind where it came from. There's a lot of terrible medicine out there for hydrocarbon extractions, but it's a scary thing, man. And to have lived through that, from making BHO in backyards with PVC pipes, probably almost killing myself a few times, to now seeing my friends legitimately starting these businesses, making rosin and owning cultivation facilities and living their dream, is something that I'm so thankful I get to see happen.
No, it's amazing. And that's one of the things I really want to get touch base with you was the concentrates. I know it's something you really love to do, because you start off with the hash. So we all love hash.
Yeah, man. I started smoking bubble hash when I was like 15. My mom actually introduced me to it, and I had found some, didn't really know how to smoke it, so she got a cup and a tack and some straws. And we smoked this like really blonde keef. And I remember the taste of it. And that was the moment I fell in love with hash. I was like, what is this? So I always would collect the keef for my grinder. And it was never like the real thing until I got given a set of bubble bags in 2010 from this activist. Her name's Providence Paula. She's a very good friend of mine. But she gave me a washing machine, a set of bags, and like 4 pounds of trim. She's like, just have fun with it. I was like, okay. So I spent like 3 weeks in her basement. I was like 22, just learning the process. And then I started friend request Nicotine, Bubble Man, and all these people who were like making dabbable bubble, Matt Rise. And I wanted to figure out how I can make my bubble go from a semi-melt Lebanese to dabbing it on full melt. And I was one of the first people in all of New England, if not the first one, who had an extraction company. In 2010, I was making hash for everybody, dude. And before I knew it, I was like a fixture in the movement. And that's right around the time that the 710 culture actually formed. So my timing was perfect there, and changed my life, brother. It really did. So many cool ways. I dab every day. You know, it's my favorite way to consume cannabis. And I cold start. That's what I'm kind of known for, I guess, nowadays. You know what I mean? So yeah, just everything's still progressing. I'm excited to see what's the next thing gonna be. We're always surprising ourselves, and that's what the cool thing about our community and this culture is, that we're still in such baby steps that the next decade is still going to bring so much new stuff, and it's going to keep happening. And I always say cannabis is infinity. As long as there's breeders out there breeding cannabis, we're always going to have new strains to smoke and taste and new hash to enjoy. So,
right. And the science is every day finding something new, something more unique. We got like Delta 8s now. We're realizing all these different cannabinoids and using them as well. Bubble hash. So we love bubble hash. We talk about bubble hash a lot. Just because of its medicinal values and just how easy and fun, and you can do it right at home. It's not that hard. You can do it from trim and things of that nature.
I used to make it in my bedroom. I keep a little washing machine next to my bed, and I have a little bathroom that I have like has a washroom with bags hung in the shower. It was cool. Those are defining moments for me, getting my weed nerd on.
Yes. Oh, I love how you said how we're talking about this. But one question I want to ask you, and I mean, obviously I know this answer, but for the people who don't know that are tuned in right now, wash machine, right? We're talking about the process. Let's give a quick little rundown of how we go from product to product to end up with bubble hash, because I don't think a lot of people understand. There's a couple different ways you can do it, obviously.
There are a few ways you can spin the coin with that one, but for me, I would always try to obtain some material that was fresh off the plant. I would then freeze it immediately in a freezer for maybe 24 hours minimum to try to get it really nice and crispy. This was back in the day before everybody had the freeze dryers and cryogenic freezers and everything now, which colder the better. You want to get your material absolutely cold so the trichrome heads will separate without the stalk. It's all about a light agitation process. As we were saying, a washing machine, it's literally a little 20-gallon washer, some of them smaller. But you put your material inside this little washing machine, your trim, your bud, that's frozen inside a micron bag. So it's a mesh bag. You zip it closed and all your materials inside of it. You place that in the washing machine. Turn it on, 3 minutes, let it wash. You'll see all this water turn crazy yellow. It's the coolest thing ever. You fill it full of ice and then you drain it. And what you drain it in is a filtration bag system. Bubble bags is what I recommend. There's ice extraction equipment 2.0, so many of them now, but big ups Bubble Man, legend. You go 220 micron, 110, then you go 90U, 73U, 45, 25. People mix them up. Sometimes they'll skip a bag to get the microns all together, but then you sift. The bags have a screen lining in the bottom. You sift one at a time. You lift them, let the water drain out, you shake, and then you're left with a little clump of resin in the bottom. You scoop out the spoon. But at that point, you really want to dry it correctly. We always used to do it. We would use a microplane, and that was one of the steps that no one knew how to make dabbable bubble, and that was the step that everybody was missing. And the only person that knew how to really do that was Nicotine. And as time went on, people caught on and realized what to do. So get it spread out. We usually do it in a pizza box with some parchment. But if you can get your hands or know someone with the freeze dryer, you skip that whole process and your concentrate will be ready for you to smoke and enjoy within 24 hours, which is another thing revolutionized like how we make hash, that blows my mind, you know?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I haven't really even thought about the freeze-dried concept within hash making. Thomas, who's not on with us today, unfortunately, he's pretty ill right now. So give us a heads up that he wasn't going to be with us today.
So for me, freeze dryers are for production. If you're selling to dispensaries, you need a freeze dryer to keep up and meet the supply with the demand. Personally, it burns the terpenes a little bit for me in some cases, and the terps just aren't there if you were to dry it in a cardboard box in a cool, dry place. And it doesn't look the same. It stands out, but with the right strain, cannabis is so different and diverse with its resin profiles. That's one thing I've always tried to study. Chems and OGs and sours, cookies are more waxy than sours. Sours are the meltiest you can find. So it all comes down to the strain and the genetic. And I suggest anybody getting some bubble bags and trying to make some at home because it's fun.
I love how you broke down cannabis strains and that nature. I was having this discussion with Sherry, I think last night, about cannabis and our classifications of it. I'd just love to hear your thought process of it, because you just kind of highlighted my approach to cannabis as well, and the way I think most of us should reapproach cannabis instead of utilizing the indica sativa hybrids, which we kind of now all, I think most people in the industry agree that it's kind of Uranious kind of wording for stuff that it doesn't really count anymore. Because
when I started growing, we called things Afghani, and that's what it was known as. There was no strain names, and that was when strain names first started to come around, like the DJ Shrimp Blueberry and the first building block foundation strains we know that everybody bred from.
Yeah, that's what I was saying the other day. It was like the mother sauces. Like as a chef, you're a chef, right? We have our basic mother sauces that kind of breed everything. There's 5, right? So from your 5 mother sauces, everything comes. And it's kind of like, cannabis was never classified as that. So it's like you're saying, like, to me, Kush is a category. The sours are their own category. You obviously have like the diesels and the skunk that can be considered their own category. So if we break weed and start looking at weed into these perspectives, now I think we have a better understanding of terpene profiles, what to expect, the effects that these cannabis strains that fall underneath it would have on it. But then again, like through breeding, as we discussed, and like me and Thomas like to discuss this as well, because if you're growing sativas, you can give it the indica effect. So we've talked to people, and maybe it's through strains and genetics, or if it's through the way growers grow, because that's what we're talking about, is the inconsistencies of keeping that kind of discussion legit. You know what I mean? Because like, you can take a Durban poison and make it couch lock you, right? If you grow it right, it's going to make you run through a wall, and you're going to have energy to do things all day long, right?
Yeah, crazy how it comes down to a lot with grow times and when you harvest, really, and that all comes down to the resin. Mostly it's the resin, because it's the maturity of the resin glands that will have a different effect on your psychosis or on your body state.
Well, that's my question for you. Now, most people talk about resin, right? And we all look online where, we're talking about all the different processes. Like we're talking about BHO earlier, there's shatters, there's CO2s, there's propanes as well that are utilized. And then there's also oils and then other things that we can process into. Excuse me. And now we're talking about pressing, right? And right now I think that the press is the biggest fad, because you can buy one cheap, you can put it in your house, and like you're saying, as long as you have flour, you can press anything. But my question to you is, everybody talks about what comes out of it, right? Like, and I see crumbles and I see dry stuff, but when we come to pressing, it's really unique, because I see things come out chalky. I see things like you're talking about coming out really super blonde. And then, at first people are talking about the dark stuff wasn't really all that great, but if you process or press any sort of kind of like bubble hash, right, typically it comes out dark.
That's kind of where we come into, it's called live rosin, not just rosin. Rosin is where we had started, was kind of made from flour or from dry sift. Live rosin is now made from very fine grade bubble hash. These guys are pressing what I would consider 6-star, the finest grade dabbable full melt ice water extraction you can get your hands on, and they're pressing that, turning that into a rosin. So they're refining it into an even better product. So that's really, to get the best quality rosin you could possibly get your hands on, it's a live rosin. That's what a lot of these dispensaries and really creamy looking, wet batter looking rosin, that's all live. So it's made from material, like I said, that was frozen and preserved. The trichrome heads were not disturbed at all from harvest trim right into the machine or however they process the bubble hash. I know some guys nowadays are doing a nitrogen wash. I have tried a few of the nitrogen washes. To me, that makes the concentrate that you're going to press more keef-like. And right from there, you're going to have more chlorophyll a bit, more plant stalks. So it's going to come out a little bit darker. The flavor is going to decrease a little bit more as you use more of the nitrogen on it. So if they're using a light wash with the nitrogen, it will still come out nice color. Good terpene preservation too. But the best way to do it, man, freezing some trim, running in some bubble bags and pressing it right there. You can still use a hair straightener. I mean, I know people who have very, very, very low budgets, and they use a hair straightener and a clamp right from Home Depot, and they make great rosin at home still. And how you can change the process is by manipulating it. You can whip it with heat, or you can agitate it in other ways and can change the consistencies. So hash is a chameleon, man. It really is. One thing may have been another. You know, just like distillate now, everybody's dabbing distillate. That was made from what we used to call food grade. And it was shitty shatter, dark, gross shatter that no one wanted to dab. Now they can refine it and take all the pigment, the flavor, and the taste and the smell away from it and make it a good product. So that was another one I was going to mention for game changers was no more reclaim, no more food grade for edibles. Distillate really changed the way that food and delicatessen foods are going to be for patients in the future. I don't like all sweets. I'm not a sweet guy all the time. I like a savory edible once in a while, you know?
Yep. All right, Bobby, I have a quick question for you. So when I started my dabbing journey, someone gave me the advice of using a hair straightener. So I went out and bought, I gotta tell you, I broke 4 of them.
Oh yeah, they'll break right away.
So I'm just for the new viewers, you know, because I'm going to be sharing this on the Green Nurse channel. If someone wants to learn how to use how would you teach them how to use
with the hair straightener?
Yeah, in a way so they're actually going to get something that squishes.
I would say skip flour. Don't try to press flour at all. If you have flour,
that's what I do.
The dry ice method. If you shake some bud and some trim for 30 seconds and you collect that first run of keef, press that in your hair straightener, and it will be able to dab. The flavor and the look and the coloration of it will be a lot better. Flour rosin is really hard in the straightener.
Yeah, that was
we all know, I was pressing it in my house for a long time trying to figure it out, and really where it comes down to is having the resin glands already separated from the plant matter. That's how you're going to end up with a better product for yourself and something that's going to be really enjoyable to smoke. You're not going to have to pluck little green specks of bud out of, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was doing research, and my research was an epic fail. So.
It happens, man.
Well, nowadays, I mean, you can buy an inexpensive press on the market. You know, some of the ones like a Nuggz Smasher, they're $800-900 for a kit, and yeah, I know that sounds expensive, but if you're into dabs, which are really effective, when I talk about I call it black gold. It's exactly what Bobby's talking about. It's the pressed bubble hash. Now, when we talk about bubble hash, I wish Thomas was on because Tom would be in his glory right now. When you pull bubble hash down, you typically don't lose any of the cannabinoids. And we had Kevin Spellman on a few weeks ago. We were talking about extractions and the loss of cannabinoids. And even he was like, there's an exponential loss of cannabinoids when you utilize CO2 and BHOs and chemicals that are within it. And then, like Bobby was saying, if you don't have the right tools and you're doing it on a mass production scale, or you're just banging stuff out in your back room, which, you know, you can do safely still at points, but if you're not vacuuming off, baking off these chemicals at the end to get your end product off, people are getting that into their carts. And then when the car industry happened, that's what we're talking about a lot, you know, really early with the issues that we're seeing. It's like people are smoking like literally the byproducts of the off gases that are still within their product that never got taken care of.
I knew, man, as an asthmatic, I knew like not to smoke any of those, and I'm really glad that I never got in the habit of it.
Yeah, those things were something. I mean, I have asthma as well, and you know, I'm a pretty consistent smoker. I smoke blunts every day, and the carts, you know, some of them are nice, and you can tell which ones are quality.
I like the sauce carts.
Yeah, the sauce carts are the best. I love those things.
I've actually had a live rosin cartridge that absolutely blew my socks off. Like, I didn't know that was possible, actually.
Yeah, it is. But the thing with live rosin carts, if you guys ever find them, you know, typically what happens is their shelf life is vastly reduced, and then you only usually find them in half-gram carts because of the way they come down through with the heat, right? So by the time you get to the bottom of it, it becomes kind of like a mess. So you don't really want to look like something you don't want to smoke. But when you smoke the live rosin carts like that, typically they also take the plant down early, so they don't allow it to dry. So they're pressing it, 5, 6, 7 days after they take the plant down, and there's no loss of cannabinoids typically.
I think everybody's kind of taking their plants down a little bit early nowadays, man. It's all about color. Like, if it has a so Frenchy Cannoli, as me and you had talked about, his hash is exceptional. It's old school, but because it's darker, he gets trolled on so hard by people, man. And these people don't know traditional hashish,
right?
So they don't know that that's actually like what it's supposed to be and the finest product it could be,
Yeah, typically it's the darker you get it in those types of methods, the better it is, right? Like the blacker it is,
more cannabinoids are going to be in there, and the more complex the stone is going to be for you. You'll get an appetite, you'll have the fuzzy eyes, you'll have the head high and the couch lock, all of it in one. I love that.
And for somebody
I love that.
Well, it's true. I mean, there's a stigma against it. I've seen people kind of choose not to try it because of a color or a consistency, right?
We became rosin and hash made our generation a snob generation with weed. I'll tell you, we were already well on our way to being snobs, but nowadays because of social media, that's something I also try to educate in. Aging cannabis, I still think is great. Curing, it's becoming a lost art, actually.
Well, I like how people. I mean, I agree with you there. And we're in Vermont here. I think New England's kind of taking a hold of the craft mentality. I know people here are properly burping and jarring and really curing for the ultimate smell, taste, and terpene effect, right? I think the problem is when we talk about commercialization, right? Because these guys are just trying to bring this weed out. A lot of it. What's nice now is you can kind of almost tell what's West Coast weed versus East Coast weed in our East Coast, because you can see something that nugs that just aren't quite a nug that's as hard as a rock really isn't. There's an issue there to me. There's PGRs and there's questions that would raise in my head when I look at this kind of cannabis, right? And then the smells and the molds that you just don't see because it's growing at such a scale that it doesn't all get checked at the scale you'd hope it would be, right? You're just pushing it through machines, trimmers are going nuts. And at least in our markets out here, I've seen the rise of craft cannabis, which is something we're all hoping for, especially in our Vermont marketplaces. And we see it in the main marketplace now where it's taking a stranglehold, right? I mean, we're getting a chance to see some of the best weed we've ever seen, right?
I think it has a lot to do with COVID. Honestly, COVID really propelled craft cannabis and boutique quality cannabis over the last 11 months. And the gray market prices have driven the dispensary prices as well. And it's crazy to see them change and go up so much, just really confusing. it really confuses me, actually. I'm like, what's really going on to like, it's the quality of the cannabis, and that quality of Revered is going to lead to that quality of live rosin. You know what I mean? So that right there, it's creating the craft market. That was always kind of a thing, homegrown. But it's because of the strains and the genetics, it's becoming, like you said, craft is the future. That's really what.
I agree with you. Even as a patient, literally my medicine is made by caregivers that are in the craft. They look at everything. They look at the plant, they have their specialty, and they cultivate and then they manufacture products that are truly patient specific, which is just really fascinating. I
gotta
love
give props to my girls, because people don't even know what it's like to have to pheno hunt and pop seeds and have all these strains and then pick one and then you win an award with it, and like all the work that went into that, and then all the electric bills to keep a mother plant around for however long you want to keep that strain. Like all these variables goes into how good of a medicine we're going to be able to put into our bodies, and all of the off branches of that as well, because I definitely really enjoy a good edible at night. Not so much in the daytime anymore. I can't hang. I won't get much done, but in the evening time, it's perfect for me.
Yeah,
we talk about that a lot too, especially patients, right? Like, because we take a different approach. It's not recreational. Like, to me, there's 3 different types of medication to have throughout your day. Like your your get up and go, your maintain and stay focused, which is typically work, right? And then, like you said, going to bed. A lot of people can't eat a big brownie before they go to work. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be probably the best day ever, you know. Probably not your worst day, but probably not your best day. But you know, but I think a lot of times too, when we talk about medical cannabis and people within the medical cannabis, a lot of it comes from the recreational side of viewpoints where people wake up and they'll hit some flower that is a kush style, right? Like someone's going to put them into a couch, and then now their day's ruined, right? Now we have a patient that's just like, you know, I wasn't expecting this. I didn't need this. I had an appointment to go to. So I think a lot of that education is really important, and that's where, you know, especially with cannabinoids, like what you're talking about with the bubble hash. I love bubble hash. We talk about it all the time because again, that's one of the main ways to maintain your cannabinoids. But now we have, through technologies, we have diamonds and sauce. You mentioned sauce earlier. That's something I want to touch base with people on really quick, because sauce is one of these things where they actually took the THC right out of the product, right, through a chemical process, and it usually utilizes butane, right? But tell us a little bit about the diamonds and what that's doing for the industry.
So diamonds, man, wow, I woke up one day and remember seeing someone posting this jar, and a pressurized jar, actually they called it, and I was like, what the heck? And within the matter of 3 months, everybody that I know was like, nope, I don't want any sauce, I don't want any shatter, I just want diamonds. And I was trying a few of them, and they really were hurting my lungs a lot of the times when they first started to come around. And for me, it's just too harsh, diamonds. Especially, I see a lot of people just dabbing raw diamonds without adding the terpenes back into it. And when that first started, people were calling it high terpene full spectrum extract. Do you remember that?
Yep.
They were calling it alphabet soup and HTSFE. There was a few, those are the scientists that really, like, the chemists in our community who were like, all right, we need to change the game, and did some crazy voodoo shit. And, but yeah, to me, I'd rather have some live rosin or some sauce, man. The terps in diamonds, I know there can be some really good batches, but it doesn't compare to a really good batter to me. That's my
question. When you say it's harsh, so I've got a lot of new patients that are watching for the Green Nursery. They're all new to inhalation, they're new to vaporization, they're new to dabbing. So I'm a patient and I do dab. And we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, when you said that it was really harsh, I can hear them saying, Sherry, what did he mean by that? You know, what was harsh about it, and why would you choose one product over another?
I think that diamonds are harsh because if you don't add the terpenes, it's going to have a completely different effect on your lungs. It's more dry, I guess, is the term that I would use.
Okay.
I do see a lot of people selling just raw diamonds without the terpenes. To me, if you're going to get diamonds, it needs to be covered in a whole pool of terpenes if you're going to smoke them at all. The terpenes are going to probably help with the inhalation and the smoothness of the hit. When I dab a really good sauce or batter, the terpenes are so prevalent. There's a wet layer just on the sauce. And for me, as an asthmatic, I don't get that, especially I cold start dab. I have to. Really low temp dabs of diamonds, I get wheezy. I don't know what the problem is, or if it's the way that it's pressurizing the jar and they're not purging it correctly, or what.
Sometimes terpenes for me make me a little wheezy, and I think it has to do with the histamine response.
Definitely.
So it's not like you're gonna, it's just your body's like, woo.
If I dab a tangy or like anything heavy citrine, I have a major flare up with my asthma, and I love a really nice tangerine flavor extract or flower, but every time it flares me up. So it comes down to the terpene. The diamonds are a beast all their own. There's a lot of varieties of them out there. A lot of people that know what they're doing, a lot of people that don't, So if you're going to get it, I would suggest dabbing diamonds that come with the terpenes they're supposed to, because it's a separation process. They separate, and a lot of people seem like they like one or the other or both. To me, I would rather have both, That's what that is. It's terpenes and hash at the same time. It's interesting.
I like how the response you made to that. With the diamonds, what they're extracting, what they're pulling out of your cannabis is literally straight THC. So
very high psychoactive effects.
Right. So it's not something I would recommend to any new stoner game, I guess you could say. It's something they can experiment with, but like Bobby was saying, there's other options that would be much more beneficial to patients. This is something that for the rec market, wow, you know what I mean? It's like taking
I've been going to a lot of the dispensaries lately. I think I visited maybe 8 or 9 in Madison, Rhode Island in the last like few months. And it seems like a good crumble or sugar wax is the entry level for affordability and quality, because live rosin is $80 to $100 a gram across the board.
Expensive.
Anywhere. So is diamonds.
So is diamonds, yes.
Yep.
So it's the extraction process and everything like that that goes behind it, and the time, really, because it takes a long time to form those diamonds to form themselves. People don't think about that.
Well, it's usually a 30 to 60-day process where the diamonds will form, and that's for them to separate and grow. When it separates, the sauce is what we're talking about, is literally it pulls all the terpenes and all the cannabinoids literally right off of that. And what it forms is literally what looks like crystals. So when you get your little jars, it's little chunkies, and like Bobby was saying, typically people will add the terpenes back in, which is really nice because now you have a really great profile, right?
Yeah.
You get really nice on the
You're gonna have the terps.
Yeah, the terps are where it's at, especially when we talk about patients. So like most medical patients, diamonds is something that I would not recommend to do. And like Bobby said, price point wise, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? If you're a high smoker and you love to dab and that's your thing, then you probably need diamonds just to feel that dab. And like I love diamonds myself, but if it were for me, I would take a fresh press dab any day of the week. You had the fresh cut right there, 5-7 days. If I get my hands on those products, those are the products that are full of cannabinoids that will actually benefit a patient to enjoy. And one of the things I found really with the fresh press is, how many times have we all talked to somebody that says edibles or THC or all these other options just don't work for me? Like I'm consuming a lot, I'm getting high, but I'm not finding the effect that I'm looking for.
That's why I recommend edible oil, like Fico for sure.
Fico,
so a lot of new patients are dabbing CBG. Okay, and so I'm finding CBG and CBD, not just CBD isolate, but more of the other type of the plant. So for patients in particular, what I've noticed and what they've reported back to me is when they've dabbed CBG, they feel the pain relief and the symptom relief without the psychoactivity. So a lot of times,
I think it can get better than that for some people.
Oh my God, it's like, so
that's
they're
the
just
dream.
like total dream. And seriously, so I started to research with it myself. And so I have, a couple of chronic illnesses, and I found instead of me having to dab THC in the morning, if I'm having a lot of symptoms, if I turn to CBG, trust me, I love my THC. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Or if I have a real big day ahead of me, I want to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more clear. CBG dabbing has been the perfect substitute.
I haven't actually got to try any CBG dabs. I would actually like to try that. But CBD, I definitely, I've dabbed a lot of it in the past. What we have all come to the consensus to realize is that dabbing CBD after a dab or too much of an edible will counteract that heavy feeling from the psychoactiveness of the THC. So that's also really cool. And it's helped me a few times at a couple of infused dinner parties that I went to where I thought I was a big shot and trying to get heavy milligrams. And on the way home, just feeling nauseous, because sometimes if I have too much of an edible, I'll get sick from my stomach. And CBD actually has helped me a couple times to rid that feeling away.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm sure it's everybody's different. We're all snowflakes. We're all so complex in our own world, but it's cool to know that the other extractions have their own benefits like that too. I've got to get my hands on some CBG or some heavy CBG bubble or something.
Yes, there's Mike Robinson. He's in the community. He's a big advocate. So he's the one that turned me on to CBG. Really, really, really great guy.
Now I want to dab.
You want to dab? Yeah. So I'll tell you, dabbing for me as a patient, I didn't learn about it in a book. I didn't learn about it in a webinar. I'm a registered nurse. I learned about it in the community. So I was so plagued with stigma that I didn't want anyone to know. I hid, and I joined every single recreational cannabis group in Massachusetts that I could think of to start really learning about how people use this plant and incorporate it and do these different things. And so mass cannabis community, I want to give a big shout out to Jennifer.
She's awesome.
She took me into her home. Okay. Brand new cannabis user. I'm a nurse. I'm scared. I'm embarrassed. And she just loved me like I have never been loved. And I used to go there every single Friday for months and just hang out. And she would show me what she did in the kitchen and how she made things and how to dab. So the first time I dabbed, I was like, Eureka! Like, it was as if the world opened up to a whole nother
awesome
way.
So you enjoyed it and you liked it and had a good experience.
Yeah.
Did she
and
give
then
you a cold start dab?
She gave me, well, I experienced, I didn't experience a cold dab from her first. It was very, very hot. It was this big giant contraption with the friggin' blowtorch.
That's usually people's first experience, is taking one way too hot and having a really rough time, you know? So
yeah.
I'm glad that you were in good hands.
I was in totally good hands. It was really, really fascinating. And then, you know, experiencing the different types of dabbing has been very fascinating for me too. And I have found that dabbing for patients, you know, and especially patients that have chronic autoimmune conditions where they have flares, I call it the invisible illnesses, when they're already on a regular cannabinoid regimen and they start to have a flare, many patients, including myself, get really nervous, like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick in bed forever. And I have found that dabs generally help to break that cycle, to help people get, you know, that gets them right back on. So we're, you know, so I'm like, we educate on multiple ways of using the plant, you know, whether it be for cannabis wellness, whether it be to manage chronic symptoms of disease, or even whether it be to
I really love what you do, and having your area of expertise and knowledge and input in our community has been so vital, and I think help change our culture and have people take us more seriously by having you as a person involved with us in the last 4 or so years that I've been seeing you. So much respect and props for joining us and helping end the stigma, not only for cannabis, but in your line of work too. Because I'm sure that it's so different and across the board with doctors and nurses and what they actually think about it, you know?
Totally. It has been a complete 100% shift. And basically what we're finding as nurses is nurses are the game changers. One of the biggest things I always like to educate, and I talk about this weekly, is that, and this is really important for anyone that's listening that knows medical professionals, that knows nurses. Nurses are taking this seriously. The National Council State Boards of Nursing, which is the nursing regulatory board across the United States. It is the nursing board that provides the nursing exam for all nurses that must take in each state. They came out with a call to action in 2018. And the call to action was this: all nurses, registered nurses, advanced practice nurses, and nursing students must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabinoid therapeutics. It's a 64-page handbook.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah. So
cool.
We're actually looking, we're truly looking as nurses to bring this to the forefront and to get it on the nursing board exam. So in other words, nurses are going to have to learn the endocannabinoid system and going to be tested on it in order for them to pass their nursing boards. That's what we're pushing for.
Super cool. That's the future right there, my friend. Cheers. Boom.
Cheers. Boing.
Are you familiar with a doula? Do you know what that is?
A doula. I know what a doula is, a birthing woman. A doula.
Well, I think I may have the word wrong. It's actually the other way around. It's someone who sees people out who are passing away, and a lot of them are nurses. Oh,
a death doula. So hospice. Yes. I did 3 years of hospice nursing.
I know a few of them who actually now are trying to specialize in cannabis therapy to help people cross over to the other side and to feel less pain, to actually be able to enjoy food and all those things that we take for granted so much. So I saw that a few weeks ago, and it made me in my brain want to write a story about it, because I had never heard of anybody doing that before, and actually trying to specialize in cannabinoid therapy for people who are about to pass away.
Yeah. So death doula. So there's a birthing doula and then a death doula. So you're birthing yourself into the other realm. You know, you're going from physical form to spiritual form.
That was so beautiful. You know what I mean?
It is beautiful.
So
it is beautiful.
Now I will write an article about that and try to get a little interview going, because that's unique to me. And I've come from the hippie culture and the festival community and the Grateful Dead community. And I do know hippies who have kept nitrous tanks next to their bed as they've had to go. And that's really helped them. And I definitely believe in that as well. But cannabinoid therapy for people who
Yes.
will be passing away soon is beautiful.
So I can actually hook you up with a few nurses that are hospice nurses, and I've done hospice nursing as well, and we've done home visits with families and patients, and the things that we could share with you that we've done with these patients are just mind-boggling. Truly
My
life.
grandma is 93. She just had her second stroke. She's been hospitalized 3 times in the last like 6 months. She's a trooper. She's really trying hard, but I'm really trying to push her to enjoy a little bit of CBD and a little nibble of an edible here and there, because she's having trouble with her digestion, with wanting to eat, and her depression. Really, you know, at that age, your friends are all passing away and everybody's getting older and having kids, and you feel lonely and left out. And now with COVID, I'm like, oh, she's going to the hospital all the time, and I can't help her and be there like I want to. But even a little vial of CBD tincture for her on her dresser means the world to her lately, you know? So really
Here's some good broad spectrum. We had Julie Gappes. Big shout out to Julie for watching. She's huge in our industry here. She's awesome. Won many awards. She's an amazing woman, and she's talking about FICO, right? And the Rick Simpson oils, and she always recommends to her patients to add CBD. And we were talking about this earlier with the CBD. I just want to make sure that people understand that, you know, it is fairly known that if you do have, or you're experiencing a little bit too much psychoactivity from a THC high, that CBD is a great way to balance that out, right? It won't take it away, but it's a great way to balance it out. And we were talking about medications, and we were talking about ratio style medications like 1-to-1s and things of that nature. That's where I think like the 1-to-1s, like the, you know, that are basically where the FICOs and the Rick Simpson oils are shooting for. Rick Simpson oil is typically more of a THC kind of focused and the FICO is more of a 1-to-1 focus, obviously depending on the patient. But those are pretty heavy substances when we talk about Rick Simpsons and FICOs. Those are not something that you find normally these days. It's great for patients, and typically patients utilize regimens when they're on these, because it's not something that you can just go and eat a gram of, right?
Actually, RSO is what helped me get off Xanax cold turkey. It took me like 3 or 4 months to do it, but I was taking about a half gram or so every single day, and it really changed my life, man. Nowadays, if I eat it, I can't stop eating. I just get otherworldly munchies like the first time you smoked. It's so awesome.
So funny. I never get the munchies.
RSO, it gets me.
Yeah. So
I love it when I get the munchies.
I love eating the oil. Like the starting with FICO and RSO, like I just got into eating oil, like just having the oil. I don't know what it is about it, but you know, these are things that we talk about as the cannabinoid therapies, cannabinoid educations, cannabinoid medicine, and how that gets utilized. Now, that's going to lead to a great segue into our Can Talk segment this week with Nurse Sherry Tuckus and Nurse Mark from their show this morning, because these guys do a show every morning at 8 a.m., guys. So if you want to check it out Monday through Friday, they do their daily dose, 8 a.m. It's a great wake up and get going to your day. Very inspiring, and they do a bunch of cool things on their show. Words of the day, campus words of the day. And then they always do a Wellness Wednesday. So when every Wellness Wednesday, they're focused on certain different issues that you know we see in our medical industry. They take a doctor's approach to cannabinoid education. Today was glaucoma, which is a very sensitive subject to a lot of people, especially with the day and age of everybody being at home on their computers. You know, I feel eye strained as well. I'm sure we all do from sitting here and doing this all day long now, right? Because it seems to be the new norm, is communicating through a computer screen, even more so than before. We have a great segment on glaucoma. So Sherry, why don't you lead us into the segment today and tell us what's going on.
All right, very cool. So what we're trying to do as nurses, we're trying to educate on the health awareness months. Every month, there's a lot of different topics and how they relate to the endocannabinoid system and how cannabinoid therapeutics. So eye health and glaucoma health awareness is in January. So basically, I actually have glaucoma, which is interesting. The interesting thing about it is that I didn't know that cannabis could be used for it. And I'm kind of glad, and the reason why is because of the research that's around it and what patients need. They need to have 24 hours worth of cannabinoids in their system every 2 to 4 hours in order to keep the pressure low. They have not determined the amount of cannabinoids. They know that THC works best. They know that other cannabinoids can support it. But for patients, when it comes to the amount, the way of doing it, the consistency, the expense, they have found that it can kind of be cost prohibitive. So we come from approach of integrative. We can combine both traditional and cannabinoid therapeutics together for the patient. And so that's what we focus on, is we focus on what glaucoma is, what are the current treatments, what does the science say, what does the Glaucoma Society say and the ophthalmologists say, as well as what cannabinoids can be used when you are looking at using cannabis to manage glaucoma. So that's the segment.
All right, well, let's get going here. This is the green nurse, this guys with glaucoma.
Hey everybody, it is Glaucoma Awareness and Eye Health Month this month. Eyes, you only have 2 of them and they are both really, really important. Nurse Mark, what is glaucoma?
Good question, Sherry. So glaucoma is a group of eye diseases that gradually steal your sight without warning. So the vision loss is caused by damage to the optic nerve, and it's related to intraocular pressure, the pressure inside of your eye. So your nerve acts like an electric cable with over 1 million wires, and it's responsible for carrying images from the eye to the brain. And there's 2 types of glaucoma, Sherry. There's primary glaucoma, which is also called open-angled glaucoma, and that's an increase in that pressure. It's sort of like high blood pressure in your eyeball. And then there's secondary glaucoma, and that's when another disease contributes to increased eye pressure, and it results in damage to that optic nerve, and that's where you get the vision loss. So Sherry, what are some of the risk factors?
Well, some of the risk factors are African, Asian, and Hispanic descent. Generally men and women that are over the age of 60 years old, extremely nearsighted people, and people who have diabetes, like we had talked about. So prevention, Mark, what types of prevention are we looking at here?
Yeah, so
It froze. Is it frozen?
You guys still there?
I'm still here. It's frozen. Tim, you're muted.
Oh, I am muted. Yeah, I think Joe's frozen up altogether. Sometimes his internet connection out there in Northfield's not always the greatest.
All right, time to dab.
Commercial break.
Let me know if you want me to sign out and sign back in or whatever we're gonna do.
Yeah, no, usually it's you give Joe a minute. Yeah, it was Joe. He'll kick out and then he'll jump back in here, hopefully in a minute.
So
Oh, but I think we're still live on Facebook, aren't we? Yeah, we are.
We are. We're still
We're
live.
live on Facebook. Yes.
Gabbridge.
Let's, you know, what'd be great
Gabbridge.
before Joe gets back on, Bobby, just for the new viewers that are watching too, is one of the things I like to them to talk about is you were talking about the different types of vapes, vaporizers and oils. Would you just review that really quick before Joe comes on? Because I'm always looking for an educational moment to teach our patients.
Yeah, there's so many different varieties out there.
The healthiest,
have
like
been a
go
huge
from
fan of the Volcano.
Yeah.
That's been one of my favorite units forever, and they've actually stuck around and stuck with it for the last 10 years. So their newer models are really awesome and digitalized and whatnot. As an asthmatic, if I'm having a flare up, I'll use my vape. But I also have 2 Vapor Brothers vaporizers behind me. That's a box vape. They're wicked affordable, $100 even. They come with the glass whip. I've been using that one for about a decade as well. But now there's all these new handheld little vape pens you can buy that actually are for concentrates that you can attach to your rigs. And then there's the e-rigs. I would definitely recommend anybody checking out Puffco if you're kind of apprehensive about torches and the flame. A Puffco is probably the most world famous electric dab rig right now. And it's changing the game for everyone. I mean, to dab on the go and wherever you want, because there's no flame involved.
Do they work
No
well?
flame.
Those little Puffco, the internal ones, I always wondered, like from dab aficionado.
I bought a Carda and another model that wasn't a Puffco because I was trying to save money instead of spending the extra $150 on the actual Puffco, and they lasted for less than 24 hours each. I have friends who have had their same Puffco unit having to replace the atomizer once in a time, 3 years, you know. So
Wow.
it's an electronic device, you know
Right.
what I mean? So it's got its faults when it does, you know, don't get it wet, but they're awesome. And
Yeah.
they hit so good, and it's a cold
Right.
start. So
It's a cold start. So for the new people, can you explain the difference between a hot start and a cold start?
yeah, of course. So a hot start, you would take your torch, heat your nail like this for about 15 seconds, and then you would wait 40 seconds before you would put your dab inside the nail and dab it like this. Put it in there, put your cap on, boom, you're ready to go. A cold start would be a rig like this that's got a nail that's completely cold. You can grab it. You put your dab in right now instead of waiting. So you put your dab in ahead of time, real quick. Put the cap on, and you heat it for 5 seconds. It's outside, I recommend 7-8 seconds. 3, 4, 5. So you just eliminated that whole minute waiting process. And it's more low temperature, and it's all about terpene preservation for that one. Instead of dabbing really hot, it's all about the low temps.
Wow. Wow. That is really, really cool.
I never would
Yeah.
have thought just a simple change in how we do things would, you know, have such an impact on the community. But
Yeah.
super cool to see, you know.
That is
Yeah.
really great, man.
That is really great.
I wonder what has happened to Mr. Joe. See, this is
What has
happens
happened to
when this
Mr.
leader is
Joe?
like, you know, like,
I don't know, guys. You
well,
want to
so-
give him shoot him a text, you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me just see.
give him a little text.
I'm
This is one of the
sure he's-
nugs, one of the
Yeah.
nugs I was showing you guys
I'm
earlier.
trying to get on, I'm guessing, but
What
Some
happened,
truck there.
Joe?
Let me roll something up real quick.
Happened. Yeah. So,
So yeah, talking about genetics, I'm actually about to break up a little bit of Tropea. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Tropicana cookies or any of that tropical fruity wave that's going on right now.
no, tell us about the fruity wave.
yeah,
We need
please
some.
do.
So the fruity wave, for me, things started off with gas. Chem Dog, all those strains were like in New England, like the first strains that everybody really enjoyed. Nowadays, with all these breeders coming around, they're creating papaya, purple punch, Skittles, everything fruity, tangerine dream, like Tropicana cookies, which is actually one of the varietals I'm smoking on right now. This is Tropea. So I believe this is a papaya punch crossed with the Tropicana cookies. The scent profile on this is like
I can smell it.
grapefruits. It's like grapefruits and candy with a little bit of orange in there. And I also think there's a little bit of peach. It's one of my favorite terpene profiles. Is kind of rare that's been coming out lately because of all these fruit flavors is peach. So
Nice.
you've had peach rings before, like the candy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in some strains and some extracts, you'll get a little bit of that artificial peach ring in the terpene profile. And it's from the limonene and the citrine and the pinene and all these complex terpene profiles blending with each other from the parents of each strain. You know what I mean?
Neat. Very cool. Welcome back, Joe.
Going to hear
Hey,
from
brother.
Jeez, guys. I was gonna say
Welcome
once
back
every
to your
show, right?
show. Welcome
Once
back
every
to your
show.
show.
I guess my computer didn't like running all the videos and stuff. We can run the segment again here shortly if you guys would like. It's a great segment to talk about glaucoma, which is
Yes,
which is-
eyeballs are really, really important. Let's hear about it. It's really, really important because I want people to make sure.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Did we do it again? What's going on here? Now I'm watching my internet wonk out. Day and age of internet, I guess.
I think we need to get
Yeah.
a new router, dude. I really like something. We need to work on this, man. We'll get the IT going.
Right? I gotta go move to a different town. I
Go to
feel like,
Burlington. We'll be fine.
Tim, I'm gonna go hang out with you on Wednesday nights. All right, we'll get
You
this
come right on by, man. We'll have a blast.
for real though. Well, no, that's unique because a lot of people don't understand is in the streaming world how much actually uploads are utilizing, right? And we had this issue a few months ago where we're actually to get a new router for us to be able to do this, and even then the guy looked at me and was like, our needs are like just above what their ability is to cover. You know what I mean? So we do have these issues, and like I sit here and I watch my internet go up and down all day long. I think everybody does. I mean, we've had phone calls where we lost Sherry, Tim, and everybody across the board. Just, you know, fortunately, it's nothing we can really do about it. I was hoping to move in.
We talked terps while you were gone, my friend.
Right. Well, it's a great segment. So, and then I don't want to lose Tim because I got a lot to talk to Tim about, in which I'm sure that Bobby's going to have a lot of discussions about, because, you know, we're looking at what happened in Mass here recently. We're talking about the FDA ruling at 1%. It's like a lot of these things are big news for us here this week that we've been kind of like hoping out for, looking into, crossing our fingers on, and now that we realize that it's available and it's here. Through this little crash, I've lost my other screens though, so we're going to see if I can continue the the video here, pretty much kind of close to where we left off, and then we'll get that done for us, guys. So we're going to click back to this. Hopefully this will work. We're going to see if we can make it work. So here's back to the green nurse. We'll try it one more time.
Years old, extremely nearsighted people, and people who have diabetes, like we had talked about. So prevention, Mark, what types of prevention are we looking at here?
Yeah, so you need to catch this early before you start experiencing that vision loss, because it's irreversible, right? So it's prevention, Sherry. You really need to have regular eye exams, annual eye exams. And so glaucoma is the second leading cause of blindness in the world. It's not something to mess around with. So the real thing that you need to do is prevent it. And that's with comprehensive eye exams, and to start treatment right away. Because there's no symptoms, Sherry, right? If you have glaucoma, you might not notice it until you've lost that vision. And so, Sherry, is there a cure for it?
Well, no, there is not a cure. However, and this is even with laser surgery, which I had. We need to make sure that the holes in the eyeballs are still open. So basically, like I said, there's a lot of different things that contribute to glaucoma, but there are a lot of other things that can help with it. So medication is to slow or prevent further vision loss. Surgery, they do surgery. There's a new surgery that they do that's called laser iridotomy. And so it adds another hole for drainage if the eye fluid pressure gets too high.
Getting that fluid out of the eyeball, it's a regular circuit, so it needs to drain.
Yes. Treatment can also include cannabinoids and terpenes, complementary, not as a replacement for traditional treatment.
Right.
So medical cannabis glaucoma ranks among the most frequently cited reasons for using medical cannabis. And it's one of the indications for which the federal government granted permission for compassionate use of cannabis. 1970s research showed that cannabis does reduce intraocular pressure.
So what do the studies say? If they say, yes, cannabinoids do reduce intraocular pressure, as well as most conventional glaucoma meds. They work very well. So taken orally, intravenously, or by inhalation, intraocular pressure was reduced. Applications to the eye directly did not lower the intraocular pressure. And most trials demonstrated the pressure was only relieved for 3 or 4 hours after taking cannabis orally, intravenously, or via inhalation. So the problem is consistency. So what should you do, Sherry?
If you think about it, glaucoma treatment is 24 hours a day. And for some patients, it's unrealistic for them to consume cannabis every 2 to 4 hours. So I truly think it's the combination of traditional and cannabinoids that can be very, very helpful if patients choose that. So conventional medicine is drops twice a day. So that seems to be a little bit more realistic for patients, especially when it comes to time, when it comes to expense, and when it comes to being able to consume that many cannabinoids to keep the pressure significantly low. So the other thing that glaucoma treatment for cannabis is that they actually looked at cannabis tinctures for direct eye application. And currently it's not an option yet. You can't do alcohol or glycerin tinctures in your eye. Oil-based tinctures do not absorb and are very irritating to the eye. So we need a water-based tincture, and then it would need to be studied for the appropriate dosage, when to give it, how much, and when, how often. So we can't solely rely on cannabis due to the various factors, including past medical history, other medical conditions, drugs, lifestyle, age, and the ability to consume that much, as well as being able to afford it.
Right. In a study at the National Eye Institute, which is a division of the National Institutes of Health, it said that cannabinoids, specifically THC, could be safely used to keep intraocular pressure lowered, but it only lasts 3 to 4 hours. So the issue becomes keeping a steady amount of cannabinoids in the system to have the effect. Now, the American Glaucoma Society is reluctant to recommend cannabis as a treatment modality because of the short duration and the need to be medicated around the clock for glaucoma.
Oh no. we got the nuts and bolts of it.
That was really cool. I didn't know all that, and it's interesting to hear about the water soluble.
Just don't rely on cannabinoids alone.
Right, absolutely. So cannabis and glaucoma. So there are many different cannabinoids, but the science and research has shown that THC is the cannabinoid that works at decreasing pressure. So when we think about whole plant medicine, we can also think about adding other cannabinoids to mitigate side effects of not being able to tolerate other high doses of THC. So often we see patients that use a combination of whole plant, THC dominant, with the supporting CBD and CBG components to support the entourage effect. Primary terpenes that may benefit glaucoma. And then when you see the interaction between terpenes and cannabinoids, magic happens. So the primary terpenes that may benefit glaucoma are pinene, caryophyllene, limonene, myrcene, in some cases, humulene. So that's very interesting. We learned. And then Mark, what about the methods of administration?
So, Sherry, it's the normal methods of administration with one exception. So you have capsules, edibles, gummy, tinctures, smoke. But again, as you said earlier, you can't apply it directly to the eye. It's just not there yet. And so there's work to be done.
There's work to be done. So this has been a special Wednesday, Wellness Wednesday edition of Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse. Stay tuned for next time.
Nice.
All right,
awesome.
The production quality, Sharon. I like it.
Good job, Joe.
That was awesome.
No, that's
Friggin' rock.
We're working hard to bring in quality content that can be utilized for multiple usages. So, obviously we were talking earlier about, Sherry, the medical field, and their approach to, and their research mentality approach to, proper cannabis, proper ways it works. And we talk about it all the time, how cannabis really isn't the cure all end all for anything. And one of the best parts about this segment I liked it was that we basically, to maintain it to a point that it can work for somebody, it's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be a considerable amount of dosing, right? No matter how you do it, whether it's smoking and as Sherry pointed out, pretty much everything but within the eye, right? When I watched this, I want to say like a week or two ago, I saw a lab, and I want to say it was overseas somewhere, that had developed that technology for eye drops at this point, which is kind of unique, because that's something I want to look into after the show now, right? Because with glaucoma, and I think a lot of people are going to experience.
Joe, where did you go? Joe, I see you.
Oh, we're back again. Jesus, this is not even funny anymore. But anyways, these are common issues that we see, and everybody's wondering how we can, as a community, be, have impact glaucoma, because I don't think a lot of people with glaucoma could be like.
Hey.
Right.
So, there he is.
Oh man, am I still going on? Like, I can see myself talking, it just doesn't stop. You know what I mean? And I look down at my little, level of internet access I have here, and I just watch it bounce. It's no fun, you know what I mean? But anyways, to Tim now with what we were talking about earlier and before on the show was what's going on in Mass. You know what I mean? We're seeing a lot of these issues with Mass with the delivery, right? And one of the cool things was the whole industry came together as an industry and basically boycotted start boycotting these dispensaries. So the CDA had basically in front of and as representing the dispensaries had said no, we didn't want these delivery systems going through other businesses, which basically, like we were talking about last week, because we did touch on this last week real quick, was that it's basically built on social equity. How the fuck can you take it away from the social equity applicants, right? But now through this boycott that we've seen through the industry, they had revoked it, right? So where do we stand today on this, Tim? Did it actually get revoked? Is it something that they're not doing? Is there still?
No, they pulled a lawsuit, which is a good thing. So we don't need more lawsuits. The last thing we need is more lawyers involved right now, and that's coming from a lawyer. This was not going to help anything. Massachusetts, granted, it's been 2.5 years. It's still a brand new industry. We're still a brand new industry. This is what people don't think, that if we're not a mature industry. In 10 years on, we'll be a more mature industry. But right now, this is a brand new industry, and there's going to be speed bumps, and there's going to be issues, and there's going to be disputes within the community. There's going to be difficulties with implementation. There's going to be difficulties in a lot of regards. What you don't need is lawsuits. That's the last thing in the world anybody needs in a brand new cannabis industry, is starting to involve lawyers and courts in ridiculous disputes that should be dealt with internally. And, I understand that the dispensaries have an issue. I'm not touching this with a 20-foot pole. Massachusetts has its own issues. They've developed their, legalization in their own way. They've done some things very well. They've done some things very poorly. I'm hoping Vermont can learn from some of the mistakes, community host agreements, for example. But this was an instance of the Cannabis Control Board trying to do the right thing, trying to figure out social equity, which is the ongoing and, not ending issue that we have. There are white people making millions of dollars while there are black and brown people still sitting in jail for life or for incredibly long periods for the same exact thing. And that is unacceptable. You know how I feel about this. The problem is thinking out an answer for it, because we don't. And an answer for social equity looks different in California than it does in Chicago, than it does in Boston, than it does in Northampton, than it does in Burlington, Vermont. We're talking about different demographic breakdowns. We're talking about different impacts of, the war on drugs. We're talking about very different issues, sub-issues under one heading of social equity, of how do we make right the people who have been disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition, which is unbelievably disproportionately those who are black and brown, but not 100%. So I trying to solve these things is a very, very difficult question. And Massachusetts really is trying. They were the first state to really put an emphasis on social equity. And this delivery system is, in their mind, a way to get, people who have been disenfranchised into the industry, low barrier to entry, not very expensive, and, it's realistic. I think I've told you this, Cannabis Law Institute, where the cannabis lawyers get together every year and for 3 days and do all our trainings and get into up on the issues. One of the big was a BIPOC cannabis lawyers set up and said, you know what, all black and brown people don't want to sell pot. They don't all want to get into the industry. So how do we address that? How do we address those who have been, impacted by this, who have their families destroyed, had their, in some cases, their partners, their wives, their husbands, stripped away from and incarcerated, who don't want anything to do with the industry. So, and that always ranked really solid with me as well. We're all talking about licensing, we're talking about delivery, and we're talking about, this, that, and the other thing, preferences, but what about people who don't want to be in the industry but have been really impacted? So I think the Massachusetts is doing the right thing with delivery. I think the dispensaries have a valid concern. Lawsuits were not the right way to go about it. This is something that should be dealt with internally. This is something that should be dealt with within the community. People should sit down and try to rationally, I think we are all intelligent people who can sit down and rationally discuss these things, whether it's mediation, whether it's arbitration, whether it's trying to work with the local cannabis control board, whatever your state board, and come up with a resolution. But the lawsuit was a horrible idea. I think the immediate blowback you saw about it was right. I think the community was correct in the boycott threat. And I think the trade association overstepped their bounds. And I think they, jumped the trigger, reacted way too quickly without thinking fully about the ramifications of what they were doing. So I was happy to see that go away. You know, and I'm really hoping we can avoid any of these lawsuits as we're starting to get our own, you know, nascent industry here in Vermont set up and running.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Vermont, because there was an article yesterday in Vermont Digger talking about the rollout was taking a little bit longer than anticipated. Now we're talking about that. Tim, is there anything that was unexpected at this point, or is it, you know, due to COVID? What's going on with that whole rollout?
It was interesting. I was fortunate enough to be involved in a meeting with two of the main legislators yesterday here in Vermont, Representative Sarah Copeland-Hansis and Representative John Gannon, who are for some reason asking my opinion about things. And, you know, and what they, you know, the general consensus is that we only passed in October. It's been, you know, 3 months, 3 months, you know, it's a snap of a finger. So we're not talking about huge delays, but we are starting to see delays from the governor's office, meaning that this Cannabis Control Board applications were supposed to be taken in November. They were supposed to have been sorted and given to a nominating committee, of which Representative Gannon is a member, in December. And those names should have been vetted and given to the governor for final selection as of January 15th. Well, you know, the application process is opened in December. It closed December 31st. There were just about 100 applicants for the board. They were received by the nominating committee, received about 60 of them, but they didn't receive the full applications at first. There was only just the names and some, and then they finally got all the applications, and now we're in mid-January. And so while nothing is insurmountably, you know, ruined or behind at this point, what I think the concern is that we're starting to see foot dragging on the part of the governor's office. And the way Vermont works is that this Cannabis Control Board is supposed to be formed, functioning with an office, with an executive director, with an administrative assistant, and giving recommendations to the legislature to finalize some aspects of the bill this session, which means that would have to be done by early May. The challenges of the session, COVID. Not meeting in person, not having the State House, trying to do this all through Zoom. As we can see, Zoom does not always work great. We're doing a live stream show here. Now imagine there were 60 senators all trying to live stream in Vermont, some of which live in areas with very rural and poor broadband. So the simple reality of trying to conduct a virtual legislative session during COVID, and with those COVID priorities, obviously, I mean, hey, I am the biggest person for cannabis in Vermont, and I will say it is not the single most important thing that these legislators are facing right now. Feeding people is, making sure that, you know, in the winter, you know, that people have heat. You know, there are some pressing matters right now, given our circumstances, that are, you know, priorities for the legislature. So when you see this kind of foot dragging on the part of the governor's office, when you see things starting to get past their timelines, on top of an already challenging legislative session, I think the concern is that we can't let it just get forgotten about. We can't let it just purely get backburnered, because if they don't have it up and they don't have these recommendations by May, our legislature goes out of session. We've got a citizens legislature. They do not sit year round by any stretch of the imagination, which means we might not have a Cannabis Control Board until January of 2022. And at that point, the timeline has that Cannabis Control Board already issuing applications. We were fully expecting to be submitting cultivation applications by January, you know, of next year, not introducing ourselves to the board. You know, the board can continue work when the legislature is at session. So the important part is getting them up, getting them running, getting them staffed, and at least getting them started on some tasks before the legislature goes out of session. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're hoping that happens. We're trying to incentivize people to call the governor's office, not, you know, mean, not nasty, not with, you know, any sort of antagonism, but just like, hey, you know, I'm a Vermonter, I'm a small business person, I'm interested in this, and I would just like to encourage the governor to move as quickly as possible in nominating and getting these members to the Senate. One thing I did find out, though, while the members do have to be confirmed by Senate vote, they can be working in an acting capacity. So they can get staffed and working in case the Senate doesn't have a chance to get through the formalities of actually, you know, voting on them. They can still be doing their job. So that was, you know, that's a little piece of good news. And we just want to keep an eye on it, man. We just really need to, you know, keep an eye and make sure that the people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing are doing it. I tell you, frankly, I'm a lot more worried about opt-in, opt-out right now. That's my biggest concern, a lot more so than the staffing of the Cannabis Control Board. Because if we have no places to open cannabis retail, it's, you know, right. We got no place to open cannabis retail. We're growing a lot of dope, we still can't sell.
I mean, we've seen a lot of states struggle to get their systems rolling here. You know what I mean? A couple of years delays.
Arizona. 30, 60 days, 60, yeah. We pass it, no problem. Open up, let's start selling. I think they started adult use sales today. I mean, that was just incredible. And I mean, I wish more states would just do that. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We do not need to take 3 years to learn how to sell pot. We sell pot. Come on. But anyway.
I mean, it's kind of like New Jersey. I mean, we all thought New Jersey was going to be like, oh my God, they did it. They went ahead, they got it done, and now we still see issues in New Jersey trying to get stuff done. And I mean, again, like you said, a lot of it's COVID, a lot of it's the processes that have to be involved.
When you look at Jersey, New York, I mean, you're also adding a layer of bureaucracy that makes Massachusetts look like Vermont. I mean, the amount of, special interests and money and committees and levels, I mean, that's Byzantine in terms of how much bureaucracy and red tape they have to get through. I never, the fact they voted and they got it through is great. That means it's going to happen. And with Jersey, that means New York is going to happen. There is no question. There is no doubt. Will it happen in the next month or two? Probably not. Is it inevitable? Absolutely. And those, like I've always said, those are game changers. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Once the full East Coast goes, there's no stopping federal legalization at that point. It's just absolutely inevitable, whatever form that may take. It's not just going to be, okay, pot's off the controlled substances list. It'll always be restricted. It'll always be some sort of, the government, well, you can't ever just let things be, they still need to have their little control. But with any luck, people won't be going to prison, and we will have some consistency and some standardization in the industry.
Yeah, which is what we're all seeking here a lot. Another great piece of news I saw out of Florida, Senator Tina Pulaski and Representative Nick Duran are bringing back some legislation to stop public employees from getting fired for using medical marijuana. This is an issue and a concern that we talk about a lot, especially when it comes to public office workers, whether it's the town clerk to even a police officer, guys. Like, these people should be allowed to utilize medical marijuana in a state that allows it to be legal, right? We've seen people get fired for this. We're gonna have a couple different people on the show here in the next couple of months who've been in the Air Force, who's lost their careers basically for utilizing and we're talking about medical marijuana, not even illegal, not even anything that was outside of the realm here. Now, in 2016, Florida voters had approved an amendment for legalizing marijuana, right, for medical use. And in 2019, they finally approved a bill that allowed them to smoke. So for a few years, they didn't allow medical smoking. So, Tim, does this pave a way for the future? Or is this a bill that you don't see getting anywhere? Just a great looking bill?
No, Florida is very interesting because Florida passed a ballot initiative. The response to the passage of the ballot initiative of medical cannabis was the legislature and the governor, who were both very anti-cannabis and marijuana, stepping in and trying to put all these restrictive covenants. You can't smoke it, you can't look at it, you can only do it, between 2 a.m. and 2:25 a.m. on full moons on 1 foot. Ridiculous. And the court stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. What you are doing, in fact, is infringing the will of the people. Which I love when courts do the right thing. It's rare enough to be really fun to see. But they did the right thing. And so every one of these restrictive covenants, just slowly, the courts won't, no, infringement upon the ballot initiative, very similar to what's happened in Oklahoma with their medical program, which is very similar. People want it. The government forgets they're supposed to represent the people and do what they want to do regardless because of their own special interests. And thankfully, the court's knocking those restrictions down. I will tell you though, this matter about cannabis use and ancillary consequences, it's making employment law more interesting, I think, than it's ever been in the history of employment law. Usually a very dull, dry area. This is actually fascinating. And what's really cool is that we're seeing the Zaggies change. We're seeing, 5 years ago, we were dealing with, Dish Network v. Coates, which is a Colorado case in which I believe he was a paraplegic individual, worked as a customer service representative for Dish Network. Absolutely fantastic, nothing but rave reviews. Customers loved it. I mean, he was just, considered one of the best customer service agents they had. Medical marijuana patient was fired on a random drug test, and the Supreme Court said, Colorado said, you can fire him. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Drugs. We're seeing that change. We're seeing it change in a case in New Jersey. We're seeing it change in a case in Massachusetts. Now that is no longer the overarching judicial principle of you can fire people for this. Now it's, well, hold on. Is this medical? Is this recreational? Is this being done at work? And now they're starting to make those logical inquiries that people want to know. Is this somebody who's, you know, going to their job as an airline pilot and sitting there on the runway smoking, you know, before they take off the plane? Or is this a medical patient who's using it at night before they go to bed so they can sleep through the night without pain? You know, a very important distinction, one would think. And now the courts are at least starting to ask these questions. They're starting to look at the circumstances, and it's not just automatically you're using a drug, okay, they can fire you. Unfortunately, there's still some other of that. I just was reading about a case about a prison guard who was fired for medical cannabis use, and there was concerns they raised that he would be supervising others using cannabis, you know, or in jail for cannabis. I still think that's asinine. Does that mean if you're a guard in a jail and you happen to have a drink now and then, you can't work because just in case you might be supervising somebody who abused alcohol and, I don't know, killed somebody? You know, I mean, the logic isn't there. So I'm hoping that, you know, as we see more and more courts rule the right way on these employment issues, we're going to see a wider and wider breadth of people whose jobs are not threatened by the fact that they choose to consume a plant on their own time responsibly.
Well, you make a great point of using like alcohol, but I want to even go a step further than alcohol. It's like, I mean, there's a lot of people that that work using methadone and Suboxones and, you know, other government approved and prescribed drugs that, you know, probably could mess them up way more or worse than cannabis, and that's allowable, right? In most situations, as long as the person can perform. So, I mean, I can understand the fact that, you know, if you can't perform your job, go home. Right?
He's getting their, you know, prescription fees there. Price per pill, yeah, of course. You can be on Xanax, you can be on Oxycontin and be a guard, sure, no problem whatsoever. As long as you got a prescription and the pharmaceutical companies are getting their little cut of the pill. You know, exactly. I mean, and it's when you really, we just took a case now, and this doesn't involve employment, but we just got a great new policy case. And this is a gentleman here in Vermont who total abstinence program, had an alcohol problem years ago, had a bunch of DUIs, had a lifetime suspension, got involved over a decade, almost 2 decades ago, in the total abstinence program, and has been clean since. Has had a drop to drink in over 15, 16, 17 years now. No drugs at all, grown, and now he's, you know, much older, has a family, has a new job. I mean, this was back, you know, early 20s type thing. We're talking a completely totally different part of his life. Developed a difficult medical condition that required, you know, cannabis was one of the only things that made him feel any better, that relieved some of this pain, that relieved some of the condition. Very responsible user of medical cannabis, only at night, only when necessary, only when needed, not even like a snorter guy. Just someone, a true medical patient who used sparingly and occasionally. During an audit of this total abstinence program, they came in, looked at the medical marijuana registry, said, "You're a patient, medical marijuana? That's a violation of the total abstinence program. Even though you haven't had a drink in 15, 16, 17, 18 years, we're yanking your license. You're permanently revoked. Oh, but if you want to pay us $300 a month, you can have the blow and go in your car, and then you can drive."
That's ridiculous.
You're gonna revoke somebody's total abstinence program and their license for life because they're a medical cannabis patient, but it's okay if they pay $300 a month to blow in an alcohol sensor tube where there's no allegation of alcohol use. You want to talk to me about absolutely? I can't wait to get in front of a jury with this one. You know,
that pretty much defines like where we're at as a whole community. The hypocrisy needs to change, man.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's
the alcohol things though. I mean, I laugh at them because I have a few friends that have those. You know, I've ridden in a car, and like the most randomest times, these things buzz, and they require you as you're driving to sit there, press a button, blow into this box, and all this crazy shit. And if you don't do it fast enough, they get violated. So it's not like they get enough time to even pull over the side of the road, stop safely, and then do this. They could be in the middle of the highway. We're on a back road cruising 60, 50 miles an hour on a back road, and his thing's going off. And I'm like, dude, you're going to do that right now? Like, it's I don't think it's very safe. But leading up to this, so another great is I saw another article in Arizona, right, where it was a nurse basically who was told they're going to get fired for using medical marijuana. He went and got a script. He was all legit. And now he did a New Times story. So you guys can find the story in New Times. And then he presented a lawsuit. for his right to be able to consume. Because again, like we're talking about right now, like what is the difference between any other drug that you are medically prescribed? We're getting prescriptions for this now. It's medically allowable in pretty much every state in this country right now. So how do we protect our rights for workers and public workers? You know what I mean? Like I personally would have no issue having an officer of the law utilizing cannabis in his regimen to provide himself with a better, safer, happier life, where I know that the interaction with the people that he has to choose, that he chooses to protect and serve, will hopefully go much smoother than some of the things we've seen on TV. Not to say it's every cop, but in theory, right? Because I mean, a lot of these guys are under stress, and a lot of the issues that we talk about, you know, they were at Cops Alley, stress, you know, anxiety, not sleeping at night. You know, we don't understand what goes on in these guys' day-to-day lives, especially when it comes to like the city life cops that see shit that we don't ever want to talk about, probably, right? And these guys need help. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to see these guys. You know,
the problem is there's also been this narrative that alcohol is okay for that.
Right.
Alcohol is making it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
I mean, you're under all that stress. You're dealing with, and I give law enforcement a lot of credit. You know, I do not paint with a broad brush. I know some incredible law enforcement officers, you know, who really care, who try hard. There's a lot of scumbags too, but you know, a lot of people got into the profession for the wrong reason. But regardless, the stress, the difficulty, the challenge, the horrible things you're seeing, and alcohol, which is a natural depressant on top of that. Now you're getting drunk, now you're angrier, now you're meaner, now you're more pissed off, now you're hungover, now you're having medical problems, now you're depressed. You know, I mean, there's a reason that they don't treat returning veterans with alcohol. It's a really bad idea. I think a law enforcement, a little microdose and psilocybin. Let's see how that works a little bit now and then. You know, smoke a little weed, you know, microdose a little bit of ketamine, maybe a little bit of
it works.
A lot better than drinking whiskey and beer every night.
Yeah.
Yes, the psychedelic medical field is totally expanding. A lot of the nurses with the Green Nurse were founding members of the International Association of Psychedelic Nurses.
It's scientific proof it works. I mean,
it works.
You know, it's
I mean, now we got nurses getting on the psychedelic bus. You know, everyone's on the cannabis, and now we see
science.
Didn't
Massachusetts just decriminalize the use of psilocybin?
Somerville. Somerville, one town.
It starts with
it's
one
town. I mean, who would ever thought that would happen? You know, so
right.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for psychedelics myself. It really saved my life in a lot of different ways. So it's something I advocate for and truly believe in. And I have a friend who just got back yesterday from Peru. He's a veteran. He got a Purple Heart, and he went out there to try to heal himself and used ayahuasca to try to help his place he's been in his life. And it seems like it really benefited him, and he has a much clearer viewpoint of the world and what he wants to do and where he wants to go with himself now. So there's a couple shamans popping up in Vermont, I heard, and New Hampshire and Maine. So it's hit New England, and it's here to stay. That's a fact. And it's crazy to see it become a franchise and people starting to make it a business. You know, I never would have thought that would have been possible. I kind of feel like how I used to feel about cannabis. Like, I don't want to see it legalized, but hey, man, if we can see part of what the cannabis community has done for the world, and slowly but surely, I hope the same can happen with hallucinogens and psychedelics, because, you know, it's the truth. You know, people need to find out about it.
Well, the amazing part for me with cannabis is getting the scientific backing every day. You know what I mean? It's the people saying that this does work. This is going to work. Especially, you know, I know it's hard for people to look at, you know, a bunch of longtime stoners and go, yeah, you guys have been talking about how this is medicine your whole lives. Yeah, whatever. But now there's doctors, like Sherry was saying, there's doctors, there's support, there's evidence. We're seeing, you know, Normal just came out with an article about, you know, how much opioids have gone down in, you know, especially in Canada. Like, there's a great article in Canada, and here's a system that was set by the government, who's been in operation for a few years now, where they took all the government's work and everything and realized that, I think it dropped by 40-60%. I forget which number it was, but that's huge. That is
described as an option for people with addiction instead of methadone or whatever. You know, they should have that as an option to use cannabis concentrates and oils to eat.
Well, it's like we were saying before, what the problem is with people that, but the problem we have is people within these systems right now that are utilizing the state for help to get off of, you know, methadone, or they're utilizing methadone and Suboxone. If they bring cannabis into their systems, or they piss dirty for cannabis, they get kicked out. They lose
Yep.
their health. They go to
It's a
jail.
shame.
Basically. Yeah, a lot of these
There
people
was
are,
actually, in Maine, in Maine, a farm that was using cannabis to help people get off of methadone, and you can go check into the facility for a month or however long you needed, and every day they would provide you with different variety of strains, different variety of concentrates, 3 square meals a day, and they would help you wean off of the methadone and the Suboxone by giving you cannabis every day. And they definitely had some very successful cases with that up there, because Maine's opiate problem is so bad. I mean, I know Massachusetts is too. It's everywhere now, but
Everywhere.
here people are kind of getting benefit from this like that is awesome, and it's always been a thing. You know what I mean? A lot of my friends are sober because of cannabis. You know, and that's what they attribute their sobriety to is cannabis. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
And next week, Joe, we're going to have Sister Suzanne Carroll on.
Yep.
Sister Suzanne was on 400 micrograms of fentanyl every 36 hours. 100 pounds soaking wet, this nun that we started working with 2.5 years ago.
I don't know.
400 micrograms, 400 micrograms of fentanyl would kill me. Basically, a lot of patients, if they took 400 micrograms of fentanyl, they would need to be intubated with a breathing tube in because they wouldn't be able to breathe.
crazy.
So this woman had this horrible, her story is really, really amazing. But cannabis came in and changed her life. And over the course of, she worked with us over the course of almost a year and a half. And we were able, her doctor made the fentanyl decreasing dosage and we adjusted her cannabinoids and she's off of it. So it's really, she's going to come on the show next week.
That's awesome. The more people like that can get their stories out there and tell it to people, the better off we all are, and continue ending the stigma, because it's a shame we all have to still deal with it on a daily basis like we do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. And then now, like you said, there's a whole psychedelic world coming in right now as well. And like you and Tim have talked about this, it's like the quiet. It's coming in quietly right behind marijuana. Like it keeps popping up without even being talked about. But like we can't get these medical bills done and
mainstream psychedelics have become incredibly popular due to Johnny Depp and Fear living in Las Vegas and all these different cultural happenings that have taken place, and it intrigues people to, all right, he did that, it can't be that bad, I'd like to try it, maybe I could benefit from that. Just like cannabis, the most brilliant people in the world use psychedelics, and a lot of them go see shamans. I know Sting has what's that show, it's a cartoon on Netflix, it's about psychedelics, I can't remember the name of it right now. But in the beginning, they have testimonials from a bunch of celebrities who have done ayahuasca and peyote and different LSD.
I know which one. Yep, I know the show that you're talking about.
But I definitely recommend it.
But even
Joe
if you've ever
talks about a lot of his shows, the psychedelic trips and the journeys that they go on, DMT a lot too. Like you hear Mike Tyson's story about how much it changes.
DMT 3 times, and I actually I haven't had an experience from it yet. I don't know if it is due to my brain or my body or what. And a few of the times it was incredible quality, and I know that this specific batch changed a lot of my friends' life. Me, I don't know if it's something in my mental state. It didn't do anything. I'd like to try it again. I would.
I have a shaman that I could introduce you to. Who,
my anxiety's actually been coming back lately. I don't know why, and it's kind of been bugging me, trying to keep it back in check. I'm sure it has a lot to do with this whole COVID thing, but
the really cool thing
I've been feeling and missing a little trip. I think it's going to happen soon.
Well, it's very, it's fascinating how it opens up consciousness. There is truly what it does in the brain is so fascinating. There's these things called dendrites in your brain, and it starts to make them produce. And what it does is that neuroplasticity, different areas of your brain that have been quiet and asleep start to communicate with one another. That's the part that I like so much, is a lot of the
first took it in 2009, and within 2 months I had that first published article in a magazine. And before that I was trying to commit suicide. So within that one experience, my whole entire perception shifted, and that's about the time I took myself off the pills. And it's not for everybody, but I'm excited to see what the future holds for it, especially in society, So we're in an interesting time right now, my friends.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not for everybody, but there's been the results from it have been staggering. You know, what I mean, especially utilized properly, microdosing. I've had personal friends of mine that, like you said, just the change in their demeanor and their attitude and their lifestyle, even from a friendship, just seeing him visually every day was remarkable. And then like this was somebody who used to dab heavy and drink heavy, and he kind of took the dab away because he was like, I don't feel like I need to dab anymore.
Yes, you
I
don't.
feel I don't feel like I need to dab, which is another unique perspective to this, is because when you're microdosing, these people aren't feeling the needs for these other issues because you feel good, right? And you're not necessarily tripping. I think that's what people have a hard time understanding. Like they think you're taking a drug. They think you're taking a drug. We've been so pre-programmed against these drugs that we don't realize how beneficial they are for us, or how long they've been utilized for years, even up until prohibition, right? One of the cool things I want to talk about really quick with everybody was that there's a bill in Missouri, of all places, to allow medical marijuana use at hotels and air bed and breakfasts. Now, a lot of people don't realize that pretty much everywhere across the United States that there's laws against utilizing cannabis in bed and breakfasts and in tourist locations and things like that. We talk about it a lot and how to be careful.
I got 2 fines in Spain and Barcelona a year ago for it. So all over the world.
Yeah, everywhere, right? So here's a unique thing, and we were talking about it earlier, especially with medical patients and public patients that have a medical card, right? Where you can consume and utilize. Now, the big thing that I always talk about is when we talk about consumption, things like that, I always kind of kick back to the cigarette style thing where it was like, hey, we kind of removed cigarettes from bars, we've removed cigarettes from, certain areas of many states, right? If not completely in all the states. How do we bring cannabis and consumption and social, a building in where we all can come meet? Can we do it in hotels and bed and breakfasts? Can a hotel and bed and breakfast
built a social lounge inside the venue? I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't be acceptable, man. Especially if there was no combustion allowed inside, and you're only allowed to use electronic devices like e-nails and e-rigs and whatnot that can plug in. So, I mean, I know there was a hotel when maybe 2 years after Colorado legalized that tried to do this, and they provided an electric nail in every room of the hotel. I wanted to stay at this place so bad. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I don't think it lasted very long. But someone tried it. They had an investor and launched the hotel and had a bunch of people staying. I mean, that would be so cool, because I can't tell you how many times in my travels I've had to pay a fine in almost every state I've probably visited, even if they're recreational or not, from smoking in my hotel rooms or off on premises. And I've actually never gotten a fine though for decrim. I kind of wanted one, but it's never happened to me.
Well, I mean, I guess most of these places face a lot of issues, right? Between insurance issues, licensing, right? Because you have to have licenses to operate as a bed and breakfast, correct, right? And then, Tim, what is the big deal with this, that we see in most states?
Most of it's Clean Air Act. Most of it is related to tobacco smoking and the inability to have any sort of smoke in a place of public accommodation. This is what we're talking about here in Vermont right now in terms of where they can limit cannabis use. My belief theory is you're right. You can't do it in a bed and breakfast, but you can in an Airbnb, in a private home. And that's the difference. Is it a commercial property open to the general public, or is it a private home? Is it a private residence? Is it a private area?
That's probably always going to be a really sticky area for us moving forward, I'm sure,
Yeah.
As long as cannabis is Schedule 1, I mean, I don't see any of this headache going away for us anytime soon. I'm sure compromise is going to be found along the way, but hey, it's better than nothing.
Well, you make a great.
But hey, guys, I'm sorry I got to cut things short. I got to handle some stuff, and it's been
really
fun.
Meeting you,
really
man.
fun afternoon.
Seriously, so great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I got to learn a bunch from you guys, and I actually haven't gotten to meet you or Sherry yet in person, so it's
virtually
a pleasure to meet you over Zoom. You know what I mean? And
I know.
sooner than later, we can all get back together and
I'll send you a text.
Time. Yes.
I can't wait. I can't wait till we can come down and do DigBoston and just
oh my god,
hang out with everybody. I
miss it.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe I'll catch you guys at one of my Interpretasting sometime. It's a social distance, assigned seating, and everybody gets a flight of cannabis, like a beer or wine flight to try for the event, gifted from our sponsors. We then pair that with juice and different food varieties, all made in a licensed kitchen on site. So
Love it.
Oh,
man.
that sounds like fun.
So, you do know we're going to start trying to do reviews with the green nurses here. So, me and Sherry could get an invite to do a review for you guys.
We would love to have you guys out and make sure we
I'm
take good care of
I'm
you.
a researcher. I'm totally a researcher. I'm so happy and willing to
That's awesome.
research for the medical community. So I will do the reviews.
Dane, I mean, that's been a huge part. Interpretasting is all about the terpenes and the pairings of terpenes with different foods that also have terpenes, carrots and everything.
Yes.
They all share terpene profiles. So the pairing thing, I really think, is the future, and that's what interpretation is all about. So, and
that's what we teach too with our patients, is because I look at cannabis as a phytobotanical nutrient and the nutrition and component of it. Nutrition is the number one thing that affects our endocannabinoid system.
Yep.
So the more healthy nutrients that you can put in, paired with the terpenes, paired with the cannabinoids, seriously, it's mind blowing as to what you can do to heal your body. So I'm really excited for that. So thank you.
As a Folders winning chef here, 5-star chef, farm to table, natural ingredients, stuff like that is something that I've always been a huge fan of, especially when it comes like thickeners.
It all follows under the line of craft, you know?
Yes. All right, Bobby. Well, how can people find you, reach out to you? Where are you at? I know you're everywhere, but how can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Bobby Nuggz. I have a bunch of pages on there. You can find me on my personal page, Robert DiVincenzo. Give me a follow. We have a couple of events coming up for Interpretasting, which is a craft cannabis tasting series for 21 plus adults in Massachusetts. 2/27, we still have tickets available. Got a bunch of things coming up. Bobby's Bar Pizza, I'm actually doing a pop-up on the 1st. We sold 50 pizzas, sold out today, first day. So that's super cool. I'm really proud and humbled for that. You can find Bobby's Bar Pizza, Bobby's_bar_pizza on Instagram. Stay up to date with me in Northeast Leaf Mag. We have our newest issue coming out in a couple days. And I think me and my girlfriend Bailey have 4 or 5 different articles in the magazine and a bunch of new photos. So always good to contribute my knowledge and expertise, and appreciate you guys for having me today. It's been an honor to join your awesome project, and your great creativity, man, and everybody you have involved. Super freaking cool. So
thank you. Well, that means a lot coming from us, Bobby, because obviously we're humbled by having you here.
Dude, you made me look like a boss, man, and tripped me out. You really inspired me to get some writing done this week, and to see my name behind you makes me feel like I'm doing the right things, guys. So thank you.
Hey, man, well, we appreciate you more than you know. This industry appreciates you more than you know. And hey, give Bailey a huge shout and some Canada love from us. What you guys are doing with Northeast Magazine with Danny Danko, that whole crew, fucking love it. Hopefully we're trying to work our way into there somehow, but we'll talk.
We'll make it happen, man. Make sure I'm a bridge, and whatever you need, just reach out, and I'll make sure I smooth it over, and we'll make it work.
I love
it, guys. Happy New Year. I love you all.
Happy New Year.
Thank you too, Bobby. We love you too, brother. All right, guys.
Awesome.
What a guy.
A lot of these guys we have are so humbled with the things that they've done for the industry. I mean, it's hard to understand the impact that you have and the legacy that you kind of lay down, and especially even with us in the shows and the people that do these podcasts and the people that have been activists for years and putting their names on the lines and their lives on the lines and who've served time. The Eddie Leps. You know what I mean? And then we get the people that, the sub cools, these people have been through their stories are just amazing. Bobby's been there, man. And he's been writing, like he said, his story is amazing. I don't think a lot of people realize, the abuse, the substance stuff he had dealing with, his depressions, his state of minds. Because, I think it relates to everybody, especially like he was saying right now. I think a lot of people are in this depression. It's a new year. Things haven't really seemed to change. The best part of our whole year has been Bernie Mittens so far, which I think provided a lot of relief into our lives, right? I'm not going to lie. I thought Republicans share Bernie Mittens fucking meme. So, that just made everybody laugh. So it's what we need in this life. Everybody needs to smoke a bowl and just kind of sit back and
some mittens on.
Some mittens on. But Tim, one more thing I want to talk to you about before we get the show ending here. I just love hearing Bobby talk. And guys, again, Northeast Leaf Magazine, DigBoston. He's everywhere. Him and Bailey are doing some wonderful things. And Interpretations, we should all try to go down and check one out here real soon.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of cool projects, especially going on in the food side. But speaking of the food and projects and everything else, it's the USDA, right? We kind of touched base on this last week, and I keep seeing articles coming out now, and some of them are, contradictory. I see some articles that everything's placed on hold, and I see articles that the USDA raised the limit for hemp eradication to 1%. And we kind of touched base with this with Thomas last week, but where are we this week? Is it something that we're putting on hold, or is it something that actually got pushed through and we can count on?
It's something that passed. I mean, the final rule was implemented prior to the change in administration, but we're going to have a new USDA head who could revoke the rule, couldn't change the rule. Not to mention the fact that next year we're going to be up for another farm bill. The Agricultural Improvement Act is every 4 years. Last one was 2018, the 2018 farm bill. We're going to have the 2022 farm bill. So we're going to have a final rule that may or may not be a final rule, that may or may not be a final rule for a year, that may or may not be a final rule for less than a year. And that's, you know, and then the short answer, you want the Cliff Note version of it. Nobody knows. Nobody ever knows. You know what's going to happen. We can gather that the DEA is still having a disproportionate impact upon this piece of legislation where they should have no business being. As we can see that by the continuation of this ridiculous DEA laboratory policy to handle a dangerous substance. You know, I mean, it's like this is nuclear waste. You know, I mean, come on, guys. It's 1.1, quick, it's going to explode. You know, we need federal oversight. It's so absurd that you just, you know, it boggles the mind. But yet these arguments still seem to carry some weight with a subset of people who happen to be overrepresented in our legislative process. You know, so I think that we're going to get better. I think things get better. I really, really do. I think that, you know, the changes that were made were good changes. They didn't nearly go far enough. But if that was what we got under the Trump administration, I can only imagine with a sane, rational, non-sycophant head of the USDA, we're going to probably get even more rational, more reason, more science involved, less arbitrary, fear-based, 0.3, you know, numbers, where we can actually get this hemp thing going. The other big factor we have for us is that there's a vested interest in, you know, the dark side there, the Republicans and Mitch McConnell and his crew, to see this get better, because they have states that stand to really bank on the hemp industry. Not to mention the fact that the tobacco industry is going down the tubes. I mean, you know, who smokes anymore? You know, I finally quit after 25 years. And if I stop smoking, everybody's going to stop smoking. You know, and the reality is,
we recently had one closed. That was one of the first ones that experimented with the hemp and tobacco. I forget the name of the company off the top of my head. Just recently closed down and just focusing back on tobacco, which was interesting because as we talked, to me the industry is dying, right? Because they're cannabis, right? And we're seeing a lot of these guys switch over to cannabis, but you know, the hemp flower market, I don't think is where people expected it to compete with, you know, a joint. Like it's not quite the same thing. And other products, yeah, great, but I just don't think that market ever took off. And with you know, stipulations on shipments and crossing state lines, like doesn't that make it a big issue for these companies?
Yeah, I mean, you know, smokable hemp, get it while you can. And I'm a big proponent of smokable hemp. Vermont's one of the top producers of smokable hemp. A lot of my clients make a lot of money with smokable hemp. Get it when you can. It's going to be regulated. It's going to be, you know, it just causes too many problems. It's incredibly difficult for law enforcement. It just creates too many. Again, I hesitate to say that because it doesn't really cause problems. It's, you know, in reality, if we're looking at this through a God honest truth, it doesn't cause any problems. But
they create them.
It creates them in the mindset of this legalization. Oh, it could be hemp, it could be weed. People are buying it, they're selling it, claiming it's marijuana. So what? But it causes enough problems, it causes enough difficulties, and you have logistical legal problems too when you don't have consistency in testing. So you have a batch of smokable hemp that tests fine when it leaves Vermont, and then it arrives in Texas, and law enforcement seizes it and does their test, and now it tests over, now it's hot. And now the person in possession is a felon. Now, you know, so there's a lot of logistical issues that, unfortunately, as much as I hate to have to say it, it's going to get regulated out of existence, or it's going to get regulated into a very different form than it is now. But the reason, you know, I mean, tobacco's dead. And hemp, whether it's, you know, smokable flower, where we're really going to see the increase in hemp is industrial usage. It's not CBD, it's not smoking it, it's not having anything to do with that as we look at it now. It's industrial uses. It's once we have the processing and the capability to turn it into fiber and turn it into hempcrete and turn it into, you know, plastic substitutes. So we have, you know, that's when we start integrating it into the industrial mechanisms of the country, when we're using it as building materials in commonplace, that's when you're going to see the real surge in the hemp industry. And that's, again, just in its infancy right now, but we're already seeing it take leaps and bounds. Even from when we just started the show, I remember talking about this in terms of us having 0% production capability for industrial hemp, and that already is now quickly rising. And the huge plants in North Carolina has come online. A lot of these former tobacco states have enough foresight to say we need to replace this. We need to replace this or we're going to be dead in the water. Here's a great opportunity. It's a plant, it's similar conditions, it's similarly grown. We can figure it out. We've got the agricultural, framework here to make it work. We know how to dry, we know how to cure. We're really good at that. Let's do it. So I think that you're going to see the hemp rules, because if you hold the total THC of 0.3%, and anything above 0.3% total THC is not hemp, you're not going to have a hemp industry. No. That is, it's just, you can't factor in the THCA and say it's going to be under 0.3. Will there be some geneticists that eventually are able to come up with a strain that, meets the criteria? Sure. But it's going to be an unbelievable amount of work. And in the meantime, every hemp producer that tests over 0.3 total has to now burn their crop, destroy their crop, remediate their crop. Great. They're not going to be criminally prosecuted if it doesn't exceed 1%. You still can't use it. Still can't sell it. But still not considered hemp. That needs to change. That's the one thing that if nothing else, that total THC threshold of 0.3% needs to change if we're going to have a viable hemp industry. But again, that doesn't say as much industrial hemp because it's a completely different strain. So it's long, tall, it has no THCA. That'll be fine. But if they don't change that, the CBD market, the smokable hemp market, the CBG, the CBNs, all of this is going to come to a screeching halt.
Yep. No, I agree. And like I said, what do we do with that product that test over? A lot of these states are burning it still, right? Which is something that it's just a waste of product to me. You know what I mean? Because can we utilize this in an industrial market?
Just think about those poor farmers, how much money they put into their crop. Time, effort, hours. I mean, these guys work just relentless the entire friggin' season to get to harvest and have to burn with it.
It's ridiculous. Right.
I'd be pissed. Come on. I don't anything any rational person would be. Over some arbitrary point that there's no 0.3, 0.4.
Just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
0.6, 1.8, 0.2. What's the difference? Nothing except perhaps an entire, season's worth of work, effort, sweat, and money. That's the difference. And
that's the part. It's so weird how they can just make up a number and then call it something. The language, language. You know what I mean? One day it's hemp. The next day they change the law. Oh, sorry, now it's cannabis. It just doesn't make any sense.
Now you're going to jail. Now, legal crop, jail. Legal crop, jail. And when you can't point to a reason for that arbitrary distinction, you can't even pretend to point. You can't even make anything up. Why is it 0.3? Oh, 0.3.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is your rationale? It's because you just picked it out of your...
You can't pull something out of a hat like they usually do. It literally is literally deafening silence because it's so ridiculously arbitrary.
Yeah, and then you're thinking, and a lot of these guys are grown from seed, right? So from seed, you're not guaranteed a consistency or equality throughout the whole crop, basically, right? Because it's going to grow. Each pheno is going to grow
differently. We don't have testing procedures. We don't have standardization. Every lab's doing things slightly different. Some people are taking here, taking there. It just is too much. We need more consistency, but overall, we need to get rid of that total 0.3 threshold. That is just ridiculous.
I agree.
Yep. No, and I like it. Here in Vermont, we kind of got rid of that. There's a few places that have gotten rid of that initially and statewide. But like I said, some places require you to burn your crop, and that's just kind of like a loss of money.
We're very lucky here. We have a Department of Agriculture who's in charge of the hemp program, who is incredibly supportive of the hemp program. They love it. They grow it. They want to see it. They put it in food, put it here, put it there, sell it anywhere. We don't care. No licenses, no anything, because they're rational. They know it doesn't cause a public health risk. They know it creates revenue. They know tourists come up here and want it, and they want to generate small business, which why we have a thriving hemp and CBD business here in Vermont that threatens to really be incredibly negatively impacted by potential, federal rulings. So let's keep our fingers crossed that doesn't happen. It is time. I do got to kind of run too myself,
Yes,
Joe.
I was gonna say we're about to run it out. No Thomas this week. I didn't get a segment, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna play back the hard candy segment. We're gonna end the show now. We'll play the segment and just kind of kick it off. But Valentine's Day coming up, guys. We're gonna be talking a lot about candies, treats you can do for your Valentine's Day. Get spice it up, have some fun. There's all sorts of crazy things.
Sensuality episode. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. Next week, guys. We do have Sister
Good to
Suzanne
see
come
you
on.
as always. Definitely.
Yeah.
Guys, have a great week, Joe.
Thank you, Timothy.
Peace, brother.
As always,
Tim.
Timothy Bear, Vermont Campus Solutions, guys. Check him out. You guys can reach out to him everywhere on Facebook. He's our standing legal guy who just loves to talk cannabis with us. So we love Tim. But right now, next week, Sister Suzanne, we're gonna get her on. We're gonna hear her story, which is another amazing story of overcoming addictions, right? And like you were saying, fentanyl, which just blows my mind because when we talk about fentanyl nowadays, all I hear about is bad heroin. That's all I think about is people dying on
That's
heroin
exactly.
due to
They use it.
fentanyl.
Yep, the fentanyl patch.
Did we-
Oh, are we still there?
No, we're
No?
here. I'm here.
Oh,
I
okay.
see you.
You can see me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We're good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so Sister Suzanne's story is really, really compelling. She has a horrible, horrible chronic myofascial pain syndrome called chronic regional pain syndrome, and it rotates pain throughout different areas of the body. And it's a disease. It's a disease of the neurological system. And how she perceives pain. And so she has done every single thing that the doctors told her to do. They actually put a machine in her body. She has an internal neurotransmitter signaling system machine to stimulate her brain. And then she was also on multiple pharmaceuticals, 400 micrograms of fentanyl every 36 hours, which is really a lot. Weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. So cannabis truly changed her life. It allowed her to come off of the fentanyl. She was able to get back to the church. So she just has, and she has a lot to say about religion, spirituality, and cannabis. She's quite the spitfire, and I think you're all going to really enjoy her next
Well, we
week.
can't wait to have her on because a lot of these people have converted over and gotten a hold of cannabis. That's their attitude now because it's like they realize the stigmas that they suppress themselves with to realize once they get to try it, utilize it, the benefits of it, and like, wow, it wasn't that bad. Wow, it wasn't what everybody told me it was going to be. Wow, my brain didn't cook on these drugs, right?
Yes. And it was, and Sister Suzanne's story was the story that my mother needed to hear. Sister Suzanne's story, and basically, with the question I asked Sister Suzanne at one point in time was, what would Jesus say about all this cannabis? She held up her finger and she goes, Sherry, Jesus would say, what the frig did it take you so long to use this God-given plant that I created for you? That's what the first thing she ever said to me. So I took that clip and I sent it to my mother, and my mother called me up a couple weeks later and she says, hello, what's the gateway to cannabis? So she wanted to know how she could stick her toe in. And we started with topicals and then progressed from there. So it was really, really cool. You just never know who your story or someone that you love story could truly save another person's life.
Well, that's why we do what we do with the show. And we talk about
we do what we do.
Story out of them, because again, it's not so much about what we've done in the industry. It's about how we got into it, where we made that decision, how we started smoking it or consuming. It's like, kids at parties, man, because we get a lot of stigmas about it being an entryway drug. It's an entry level drug. It's an entry this and entry that. And to me, I kind of laugh. Like, we all know it's like the party thing. How people get exposed to it. It's usually our friends, right? And then that's the issue, right? Pot to me never made me want to go do any other things. I mean, other drugs would make me want to go do other drugs and have fun and go nuts, but pot was always different for me. And when we hear stories like even with Bobby's today with depression and all his issues that he was succumbing to, finding his way out was utilizing cannabis and like he was saying, even psychedelics was remarkable.
Oh boy. Well, this is the thing that's so interesting is cannabinoid therapeutics and psychedelic therapy actually is so profound for people that have maxed out on drugs. They have nowhere to go. They're plagued with stigma. They're on a ton of pharmaceuticals, that anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, the complex PTSD. They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're just existing. And so you can imagine you have cannabinoids that come in that work on your body to regulate every single system. And then if you learn about psychedelics and have the opportunity to even utilize this as a therapy, it truly opens up your mind to solve problems the way you weren't able to solve them before. It opens up consciousness for perception, that aha moment when things just start to make sense and you can actually pull out of that story that's keeping you in that depressive or anxiety state. It just helps you to process emotions. Processing emotions is the most difficult thing any of us ever have to do as human beings. And why not use plants or substances so you don't have to take drugs for the rest of your life? Right? Makes sense.
Typically, people drink to get rid of the pain. People do drugs to escape from reality in most forms, right? Especially when it comes down to depression, right? Because then you utilize it more because you just want that to go away. You want that thought to end. You want that to get out of your head. You want whatever issue that is plaguing you to go away. And you think that that's the answer, which, you know, we talk about a lot. There's ways to medicate and help yourself, but there's ways to, you know, drink whiskey for a broken toe. And what does that do for you, really? You know what I mean? It helps you get by for a few hours, but within those few hours while you're drunk, what are the things you're going to be doing? Whether it's to your wife, family, friends, like we were talking about, service workers, especially with like police, military, people that like to actually see battle of such, you know what I mean? They see, you know, have to deal with patients' gore. Even, you know, when we talk about ambulance drivers and people that work in healthcare, the shit that they see, that they go home and have nightmares about. I'm sure you could tell us a story and the trauma. Yeah, the trauma, right? And then when we're prescribing opioids to deal with trauma, you know, some of these people go talk to counselors, but is it really that type of regimen? When we're talking about, you know, defunding police, my idea was, why defund them? Let's educate them. Let's get them into
totally educate
proper them. Right, get them into the proper type of, you know, and not to say that a lot of these guys don't have, you know, get evaluated or have to deal with shrinks, but I think, you know, when you're, I hate to say it this way, about a shrink cop dealing with a cop, it's more about the system than it is about the healthcare, right? It's more about, hey, you know, get you this guy back out in the field. He's a good guy, carries a gun, it was just an accident. You know, it's kind of like what we see in the police stories, but whether it's true or not, I can only imagine. But I have to say, probably more than normally, yeah. You know what I mean? Because, you know, we're not funded. We don't have enough people. You know, there's stresses like there is in every industry. So these people being off the job is not going to be beneficial to their industry either. You know what I mean? So they're pushing people through. And then a lot of these guys stay in the line of duty while they're taking their therapy, right? So they're not even really stable in their head, and they're still, you know, taking therapy and in the line of duty. And that's, I think, where we see a lot of these issues are these cops that are having just as much issues as every human out there, which is where I think that the cops need to start realizing as well, and especially with some of these deaths that we've seen, you know, where we're having patients or unstable people that it's, you know, that have the medical, you know, evaluations of that, you know what I mean? There's been a few different cases of that, but you know what I mean, where these guys just have these breakdowns and mental breakdowns, and the cops come in and don't realize what's going on, you know what I mean?
They don't understand. So here it is understanding trauma and the trauma response. You know, that's huge. And being able to,
yeah, but it's not to say that these cops weren't threatened back because of the trauma that the other person had, right? So like, this is where that weird line gets crossed of like, who was right, who's wrong, and then is anybody really right in these situations? More likely no, but you know, that's the training that these cops need. Like, they're not social workers, right? And then the big thing is like, let's send social workers in. Well, a social worker, what's a social worker going to do in this situation? Hopefully, because if he can't do his job, then there's going to need to be a backup, right? So it's a tough situation. But for me, I'd rather see these cops on proper organic cannabis or even psychedelics. Like, let them take a DMT trip and take a week off from work and let them go rewind themselves every 6 months. Perfect. My tax money, here you go. Like, I'm all down for that. You know, let these guys consume cannabis. Let them take CBD on the job. If it's a broad spectrum material that has no THC and has no psycho, you know, logical effects, and it's not going to put them in any sort of, because honestly, when we talk about CBD and we're talking about these effects, you know, everybody's raises a question about being able to work.
I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I was on 18 pharmaceuticals at one point in time, sick, suffering, and dying. I'm off of all of them, and I use cannabis all day, probably every 3 hours. If you want to know the truth, you know, in the combination of tinctures, capsules, topicals, and if I'm in pain or if I want to have an adult use experience, I will inhale. But guess what? I'm functioning. I'm alive. My mind is working. I'm passionate. I'm enjoying myself. My health, not only my physical health, but my mental, emotional, and spiritual health has improved. You know,
Well, I think
and that's something that is so different that people don't understand too quickly with pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals cause a drug nutrient depletion. If I can't stress that enough. So if you're taking a pharmaceutical, Google the pharmaceutical and just say, you know, Valtrex, drug nutrient depletion, put in a pharmaceutical and you're going to see the nutrients in your body that are being depleted. So that's another really important thing, is that people don't even know every single thing that we tell people to do or not do when it comes to health and wellness affects the endocannabinoid system, our most important.
the umbrella. But I think the second problem, I think, you know, the biggest problem is education, right? The second biggest problem is cost. Like, that's the biggest problem. If most of these prescriptions are being paid for, right? Most of these prescriptions are being provided by insurance companies. The doctors know it. They're just writing scripts. And the other problem is, you know, once that doesn't work, they just add another drug to it. Or if you have a side effect, they add another drug. They don't change it, right? Until it becomes a major issue. But
and then people become traumatized. There's a whole condition called pharmaceutical trauma. It's real. I presented on it. It's the merry-go-round, you know, and it doesn't serve patients or providers any good.
No.
You know, patients end up feeling really
but the problem is,
and ashamed, and this problem. Go ahead. What did you say?
But I think on a medical standpoint, on the medical side of things, it's really hard to sit down and get to know a patient nowadays. You know what I mean? It's hard to find the time, either from the patient's time or from the practitioner's time, to sit down and get to know the patient, right? Like you said, it's really about getting to know your patient, seeing what they need, what they're doing, what they're implementing in their life right now that has to change to make sure that the medications that we're working with, whether they're prescriptions, cannabis, you know, mushrooms, any of those natures, right, are going to work. Because again, it's like the people that are trying to be healthy, but they eat McDonald's every day. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you're doing 3 things great out of 5, you know what I mean? But it's those 2 other things, you know. It's like when people want to lose weight, you know, for me, one of my big things that helped me was cutting out food after a certain amount of late at night, right? So before bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, I didn't want to be stuffing my face, because that weight's going to stick to my body, whether it's me, you, or anybody else. And just knowing that, you know, has helped me not do that, right? So trying to become a little bit more, I guess, you know, what's the word I'm thinking about?
Mountain Dew, man. Mountain Dew.
Yeah, right. But with that though, because I know that's a problem for me, I don't abuse other things anymore, like candies and and sweets and things like that. Because I know that the intake for me is a lot. But you know that we, you know, it's you pick and choose, right? So you know, we only get one shot at this. So as a chef, I used to tell people a lot, you know, while eating, people would be like, you know, 4-star chef, 5-star chef, you know, do people eat your food, whatever, you know, like, how can people do this? I'm like, well, you know, if you're going to die, at least die happily fed. Because like for me, one of the biggest things was the people that used to stress out all the time over food and like their intakes and calories and all these things. And it's like, for me, if you eat healthy, eat naturally, eat what we're supposed to be eating in the proper ways. And it's all, you know, Kevin talked about this a few weeks ago, and this was something I want to touch about. Yeah, Mr. Spellman, was one of the biggest problems I see with our industries is that people don't know how to utilize a carrot. You know what I mean? I used to do WIC cooking consultations for the holidays, right? So I dated a girl who worked for WIC, and every holiday came around, I was a chef, so we would do free holiday meals and teach these guys how to make mashed potatoes. Because like Kevin said, these guys are getting bags of mashed potatoes or potatoes given to them, and they take them and they get them home and they look at them on the counter and go, what the fuck do I do with this potato? Like, they don't know how to make boiled potatoes. They don't know how to make French fries. They don't know how to make, you know, whatever we can make out of a potato, which is a million different things, right?
Potato skins.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's
tater tots.
Some of these things sound so easy that it's silly, but like to most people, there is that issue that they don't know how to make it because they were brought up on either something out of a box, out of a can, something pre-made, you know, TV dinners, and then that's how they knew. So like to cook a potato. When I went to culinary school, our French chef had told us a funny story. This was a true story about, you know, him, you know, this is back in culinary school, and he was dating this girl, and she wasn't a cook at all, but she wanted to cook for him, right? So he goes to her house one night for dinner, and he shows up on time. He's all like ready for dinner. He walks in and it's like disaster. Kitchen's blown up. She's stressing out. There's pots and pans everywhere, and she's got like 6 pots on the stove. And he walks in. He's like, what is going on? And literally, she had read the directions to such a point that, you know, when you make lasagna, it tells you to boil each piece separately, right? So they don't stick. So she literally was boiling each piece of pasta in a separate pot for her to make lasagna. Now that sounds silly and all, but like there's people that don't understand the difference between black and white or a recipe, right? Because there's some people that like if they don't have a teaspoon of something, they're not going to make the recipe. And it's like, well, it's just a guideline. You know what I mean? It's just a procedure. It's a process, right? You can implement and change around. And like when we talk
improvise
about food, right? Talk about cannabis and utilizations of food. How do we get cannabis in our food? It's really easy if you understand what's in food, right? Or the oils or the butters, or where you can put infusions into like mayonnaises, like an infused mayonnaise. I don't know why I've seen that yet, because it's all oil, right? Oil and eggs, right? So you whip it up with a little bit of salt and vinegar, and there you go, boom, you got mayonnaise, right? I used to make mayonnaise from scratch for our delis, right? Our mayonnaise, our ketchups, our sauces all came from scratch, and legitimately, it's not as hard as you think. You know what I mean? The problem
I think you should do a cooking show, Joe.
We should for sure. But to get those things implemented into foods and stuff like that, so a patient can utilize them, is not hard. It's just a matter of knowing how much dosages of that you're going to put in your food. And then, you know, when we do dinners, like Bobby was talking about interpretations, it's how do you not overdo it? You know what I mean? So it's for me, it's like, you know, if you're going to have infused courses, multiple courses, you know what I mean, you got to make sure they can make it to dessert. You know what I mean? It was like running 5-star restaurants that offer a prefix 5-course meal. You got to make sure people get to the end, right? Like you don't want these huge Italian style dishes that are like this big and, you know, for $8.99, like it just doesn't work, right? You don't get nowhere. You don't sell nothing. You don't buy, you know, you don't get dessert. Like the idea, you know, in every business is upsells, up tricks. You know what I mean? That's why you have appetizers and salads and multiple courses, right? And then you always try to sell the dessert at the end. So make sure they're still hungry for dessert. That's what I got to say. But anyways, that's it. That's all the time I got. We got too much stuff to do tonight. We're going to play the Thomas Marcombe, how to make a little bit of hard candy for you guys, so you guys can get ready and influence for Valentine's Day, to those of you that have Valentine's Day people that deserve candy, I guess. So
me,
right?
I deserve candy. I deserve lots of candy.
We'll do a review of your candy if you guys decide to make it, and we'll try it for you and let you know how we feel about it. But here you guys go, a little bit of Coach Vermont Grow Coach, Thomas Marcombe, Grower's Guide, and this week will be the hard candy. And after that, guys, we're peacing out. We'll see you next week. Try catching new Terpene Tuesday videos that we're working on with the Green Nurse, that will be being played off of the Green Nurse page and on our pages as well. You can also find it back in our YouTubes, both sides. And those have a great bit of information about terpenes, how they work, and we specialize on. We look at one every week and tell you how you can implement them, what to expect, and then also where you can find it, what strains. It's a very unique pieces, and I think you guys get the most information we can get out of it, and then also the daily dose. So lots of stuff going on, guys. Show some support, show some love. A lot of great guests coming on, and we'll see you next week. Here it is, Grower's Guide. If I can find the buttons. Here we go.
Hey guys, Tom with Vermont Grow Coaching here, and welcome to Grower's Guide, your weekly beginner-friendly cannabis tips and tricks. This week on Grower's Guide, we're going to be talking to you about cannabis hard candy. That's right, making hard candy with cannabis tincture. It's super simple and easy to make and super delicious. So let's get started. To make these candies, you're going to need a half a cup of light corn syrup, 2/3 cup granulated sugar, a 3-ounce pack of flavored gelatin, 10 milliliters of cannabis tincture, a candy thermometer, a saucepan, a silicone mold, and a spatula. You can see here we have all of our materials collected ahead of time. It only takes about 10 minutes to make these candies, and you're going to work very fast during this process. So having all of these materials at the ready is very important. Start by heating your saucepan on low to medium heat. Then add your corn syrup and sugar, then whisk until smooth. Once you've whisked until smooth, add your candy thermometer and increase the heat to medium. At that point, You're going to want to watch for the hard crack stage of about 310 degrees Fahrenheit. Continue to stir frequently throughout this process. Once the candy has reached about 310 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to remove the candy thermometer and turn off your burner. At this point, work very quickly to add both the gelatin and the cannabis tincture to your candy. Stir as quickly as possible without harming yourself. This mixture is very sticky and can cause severe burns if not taking the proper precautions. Once your material is mixed and in a smooth syrup-like consistency, it's time to go ahead and add it to our molds. Again, I cannot stress enough that you need to be as careful as possible during this process, as the resulting syrup is very hot and sticky and will cause severe burns. When you're filling your candy molds, it's okay to have a little bit of extra candy draped along the outside edges of your molds, as when the candy begins to harden, you're going to go ahead and be able to remove that excess candy. Then go ahead and grab your silicone spatula and scrape the remaining candy from the pan. Once the candy is cooled for about 2 minutes, it's very easy to remove the pieces that otherwise did not make it into the actual molds. If you're providing these candies to other people, make sure to use gloves during this process. As you can see here, I'm not using gloves, but that's because I intend to eat all 10 of these candies on my own. So, it's going to take about 30 minutes for the candy to set. Perfect amount of time to go water the plants. So now that the candy has set for about 30 minutes, it's time to go ahead and remove the pieces from the mold. You can go ahead and toss them in some sugar if you'd like, as this will definitely help prevent them from sticking during storage. I like to put these candies in a mason jar in the pantry and use them within about 10 days. So I'm just hanging out outside, catching a little sunshine and some fresh air while I wait for the show to start. It's about 3 o'clock. We got about an hour and 20 minutes, give or take, until the show kicks off. Perfect amount of time for me to give one of these candies a go. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour and a half to kick in. Here we go. Tastes absolutely delicious. So when you guys see me on the show, I'll have already been enjoying this candy and I'll be in full swing. You probably won't see me smoking. Potency is determined heavily by the cannabinoid concentration in your tincture. Coach and Goat's Homegrown provided the tincture for us to use today. It came in at around 2,000 milligrams of total cannabinoid concentration in about 5 milliliters of MCT oil. In that total cannabinoid concentration is about 1,500 milligrams of THC. After calculating in about a 20% loss, these candies come in at about 120 milligrams of THC per piece. Keep in mind that the cannabis tincture used today was extra potent and the batch of candy was done in a half batch. So the candy is extra potent. Candies that come in at around 120 milligrams are not for the average consumer. Make sure to start small and work your way up with these candies. They take a little while to kick in, but when they do, you'll know it. It's fun to indulge, but never fun to take too much. Thanks for tuning into Grower's Guide. You should now know a quick and easy way to make cannabis candies. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's segment, or would like to set up a consultation appointment, please reach out to us at VermontGrowCoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, or contact us directly at 802-342-5381.
Well, we took that off of YouTube, our page. So if you guys want to check out any of our content, any of our archives, you can easily go to YouTube, find us there, Prohibition Talk Radio, In the Weeds. All of our shows, well, not all of them, majority of our shows are there. Oh, here we go. Let me get that off here. We got all sorts of YouTube still wants to play. Things are going on. The show's over. I'm tired. We're done. Next week, guys, Sister Suzanne, I can't wait. We do have Magic Man coming on this month. We got a bunch of great guests coming on, guys, and we're working on Keith Stout and normal. So we'll get him on as well next month. We have so many great guys. I just had one during the show that got back to me that I can't wait to tell you about. So go to our events, find our schedule. We're going to be updating that this week so we can get caught up with everything so you guys can see what's coming, what's going. And again, if you guys want to find the archive, the Masters of Cannabis, YouTube, and our Facebook page, as well as Sherry. Why don't you tell everybody where they can reach out to the Green Nurse?
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. So the Green Nurse, www.thegreennurse.com for patients and providers. We do medical cards, consultations, energy work, a lot of other progressive therapies. And for providers, we are looking for new nurses and nurse practitioners to come on board as we expand across the country. So come visit us. And we have our weekly shows Monday through Friday, the Daily Dose of AFA, Monday through Friday from 8 to 8:20. And then tonight, we have a show. What we're doing is we're illuminating nurses and health professionals across the country that have truly stepped up to the plate and who are incorporating cannabis education into their practices, as well as sharing their compelling stories of healing with this plant. So join us tonight. We're going to have a really good guest on. I think you know her, Jessalyn Dolan from Nurse Organics is going to be coming on the show tonight. She's been doing some great work.
Yes, she used to do, she was a part of our show, providing us with segments for a while until COVID, and then she went crazy because she does a million things. She's a really amazing woman. I can't wait to hear you guys. And she has an amazing story that I don't think a lot of people even realize that. Hopefully you guys get a chance to touch base on, because truly inspiring woman, nurse grown organics here in Vermont. So they have very high standards. They're part of the Clean Green system, one of the first clean green approved farms in Vermont. So it's going to be a great conversation. I'm really excited for you guys to talk to her. If you guys are still watching us, make sure you check out that. It was 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
We better get you out of here then, get you going. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned for a teaser video and all of our new stuff that we're producing. Terpene Tuesdays, there's a video out now, so you guys can just lay back and let it just get read to you. And you can learn a little bit about terpenes. This week we did pining, and then we have the glaucoma video as well, so guys will be able to find that on all of our social media. See you guys next week. That's it. In the weeds, we're out.